This is the Vision 79 podcast, where my friend Sander and myself, Mason, discuss recent developments in our business and personal growth. The name Vision 79 comes from our respective racing numbers. Sander's is 40, mine is 39, and together we have a shared vision for success in our business and personal lives. Many successful people have started small, just like us, but very few of them have documented the process. We intend to be the first to document our journey from start to finish. And we like to start each podcast with a brief update to our future selves as to where we are in our business journey. This week has been a much bigger week, I think, than probably we've had in the last month. And I think that's due to the fact that you're not editing the content anymore for the podcast. So I have you back working. So we did a little bit of a recap of the stuff that I've been doing and took account of what needs doing still. And I have a list of 23 documents total that we have finished or are close to finish or working on, we've created. So I'm going to run through the list real quick. In addition to the status sheet, which actually tracks the progress of everything that we're doing, we have the employee training presentation, employee training document, the product sheet, the product cheat sheet, emergency protocol, the emergency form, events list, employee position descriptions, new hire requirements and questions, employee duties, inventory account spreadsheet, security system research information, digital marketing design and approach checklist, 6 different pieces of digital media content, total business cost analysis, construction design and cost analysis, business plan, location select, and matrix. And we had a meeting with a partner to talk about funding, and it looks like we're closing into the final few weeks, maybe the last month or two, before we can start actually making purchases. So real physical progress.
Yes.
Fantastic progress. Thank you for your help.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the business world.
It's good to be back on our business work rather than just bulk editing. So feels nice to be working on something that I think is a little bit more meaningful for the future.
Right.
The near future, at least. I think that the podcast will be meaningful long term, but this is something that's coming up sooner that will have a big impact on our lives. So I'm excited to be back.
Right.
Part of it.
Well, and this stuff is the stuff that's going to be making us money. And this podcast, we're going to be speaking a lot about where we're going in the big picture, not what's in the next 2 months or what kind of person can we work on in the next 2 months. That's towards the end of the podcast. But the bulk of it's going to be, what do the next 25 years look like? And it's such a major project that the fact that we're so early into it, this is already a huge amount of work for just having gotten started.
Yeah.
I think it's great. My last note to make on the business update is the recent consideration for Milestone B. When you're working through an airframe as a contractor, you have different milestones. Milestone A is the design complete? Milestone B is, can you make the first working test jet? So can you get to first flight? And then milestone C is, are you in full rate production producing aircraft? And so we're looking at milestone A, which is, do we think the design is going to work? Like, can we prove that the design works by actually doing it in person? And then milestone B was kind of unclear to me. I mean, we have our system analysis, right? Which is a recounting of all of the documentation that we're looking through and the reasoning behind all the decisions that we're making in our business. And that has value in it. I think that's something that we can sell. That's the reason we're making that document. But I hadn't seriously considered it until speaking with a business friend the other day. And he mentioned that there's a guy online with a grill cleaning business that sells his business model for crazy money. And I don't know a lot of details about the grill cleaning business, but I think that the annual revenue is probably higher for this one.
Yeah.
So I think these businesses could be valued even higher. So the buy-in cost would be higher. It's just got me rolling some different ideas around in my head. Nothing, we're not having to commit to anything. It's still early days. And ultimately, milestone A is the one in front of us. That's the one we have to focus on. That's what these 21 documents are for. But finding a dual use for the work that we're doing now, I think is a cool idea.
I agree. I think that the system analysis work that we're doing right now will prove to be fruitful once we actually finish our build process and finish the business. You raised some interesting points about comparing it to that grill business that our friend sent to us. And the yearly revenue, I'm pretty sure, would be higher for our business, which would mean a higher cost, which would mean more money per sale. And also, the business we're going into, I think, will be expanding over the coming years.
Yep.
So that'll also lead more people to be involved in looking for something like we would provide.
Right.
So
I agree. And since it's brand new, there's more room for improvement. So not only can we sell, hey, here's what works for us. And it's important to actually get the business working first. I agree with you. Because we have to, like, why would you buy a course from somebody who hasn't done anything yet? Right? Like, you would want to show, like, hey, it works. And here's
it would be like us monetizing this podcast and selling it for money online per view. Like, if you want to view this episode, you pay $20.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And it's like, gee, I'd love to pay to watch these kids who don't know what the fuck they're doing talk about not knowing what they're doing. But I think that this is an interesting way that we can take the same like work product and then like double or triple or 5 times its value, instead of just applying it once or going through the manual labor of applying it 500 times ourselves. It's a cool way to just sell the paper. And I think that we can take this opportunity. We just chatted about it like 10 seconds ago before we started recording, but the difference between the documents that we want to make and the documents that are available in the world is that I want us, if we're going to sell a process, I want us to sell the intent behind the process as well. So if we want to sell a car cleaning service, right, that business model, I think it's important that in that sale, we explain to them why we make the decisions that we make. So for example, let's say we have a car wash. I'm making this up on the fly and I'm dying. Let's say we have a car wash and you have a subscription plan where you say, hey, it's $30 a car wash, or you pay $50 a month, right? Why do you choose that? Why do you even make the $50 a month a thing? Because most people don't get their car washed more than once a month, right? But the perception of them getting a better deal will incline them to come more than once a month. Even if they don't, you end up making more money. I want to explain why that is a marketing technique in the business model that we sell, because I want our clients to understand why we make these decisions so that they can make the decisions to have a more successful business afterwards. And that's in stark contrast to some advice that we were given by somebody who compared the potential of our business to the online gurus who drive Ferraris and, take their TikTok videos in mansions and stuff, and like they rent everything, and it's just like not true. And I took offense to that because that's not how I operate. And I genuinely believe, like, how does Taco Bell operate? How does McDonald's operate? How does fast food operate, right? There are thousands of other, let's take McDonald's. There are thousands of other American fast food hamburger places, right? So why did Burger King even try when McDonald's was already around? Because they had their own ideas and they work. They're a huge fucking company. So just because someone else has the same ideas as you or is selling the same product doesn't mean that you can't sell it. Like, you just have to sell it better.
Well, then additionally, I think that the person who said that, I think their point was there's not a lot of information out on the market about what we're trying to do.
Right.
So we can create something mediocre and still make a lot of money. But then my question is even if there was competition out on the market for something like this, why would we ever create something mediocre and then try to sell that to people? Exactly. Why not create a product that is so good it can sell itself and then sell that for a premium so that you, A, do better than the current market, and B, stay relevant as the market grows.
Right.
I don't want to be associated with something that's like a scam or a fraud or is trying to look like something it's not. Like, that's not something I'm personally interested in.
Right.
And so that it threw me off a little bit.
I think it comes down to, I don't want to gatekeep anything. Like, here's a great example. Let's say that you and I own a auto cleaning business, right? So we'll clean your car, like we'll drive to your house and we'll detail the interior of your car, right? And let's say our big selling point is we use these special tools with this special soap that cleans it in a different way. Actually, interesting. Have you seen the TikTok of the two guys in their brand new, the Mercedes Equus, the electric one?
No.
That
I've seen that car, but I haven't seen TikTok.
that car, I think it's that car, has a HEPA filter system. The HEPA filter is like the highest fidelity filter you can get. So it tells you what the air quality outside is compared to the air quality inside, right? And the air quality outside, let's just say that anything below 10 is like very good, and everything above 10 is like not great, right? They were sitting in their car, and it was 1 in the car, so super great, super clean, and it was like an 8 outside, so like okay, but not as good, right? And he hit his vape, and he exhaled it down into the floorboards where the HEPA sensors are, and it went from 1 to 15 to 25 to 60 to 100 to 140. Now it's in the very bad territory, to 180 to 190 to 195 to 198. Extremely toxic. Wow. From him exhaling his vape into there. Interesting. Let's say that we have a cleaning company that can get rid of the vape smoke out of your carpets. And the whole reason that we're special is we use these special tools. I would want to keep that information private because it's sensitive information, because we don't want other people profiting off of our hard work in developing this product. So I wouldn't go out and tell people what tools I use or what soap I use necessarily, because that's proprietary to my business. But if I'm selling the business model and I'm not selling those tools and that soap, then I'm not selling what makes the business work, and I'm a fucking hack.
Oh, you need to figure out how to make soap that cleans it out.
Yes.
Like, if you're selling that, what's to say that you haven't figured it out too, and you're just using these other people that you're selling this course to figure it out for you?
Right. Yeah.
And then additionally, what's interesting about the example that you make is that could totally be a scam product.
100%.
Right? Like, you could totally be like, you plug this into your OBD2 port and it cleans out, the vape remnants in your car, right? Like some bullshit like that.
Stay tuned for our business product game after the podcast.
Like, you could totally do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it would totally be a fake product and scan the shit out of them when you don't have a real product. But like, that's not sustainable long term, nor is that a good feeling or something I want to be a part of.
Right. It's like gatekeeping is just protecting your asset if you're not working with partners. But if you're selling your product, like, you're making money off of it. If you're worried and concerned that these people are going to use what you've developed, don't sell your product, right? You can't want the money that you feel your product is worth and also not give the product away when you make the sale. That's not how that fundamentally works. So I wanted to approach that really early on, because this is episode 24, right? So we're still super early in our career, and I want to set the precedent now that I am the slimmest believer in bullshit products and fucking online gurus that just hand out shit advice.
Yeah.
So
100% agree.
That's my business update. Do you have more on business? I have a life update.
Well, this is sort of business.
Okay.
We are preparing to have our first guest on the podcast next week.
Yep.
So that's like half business,
Yeah. I would count this stuff as business. It's in my professional folder in my Google Drive, so I count it as business.
Yeah, it's in my business folder. So
yeah,
we're planning to have our first guest. You guys will see who that is next week.
Elon Musk.
That'd be cool. He's a good guy. I think he'll have some value to offer and some different perspectives, and I think you guys will enjoy what he brings to the table, and it'll be interesting to have him on and try out having a guest on this podcast, which is something we've never done thus far.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that we've now recorded 24 episodes, including this one. So, we've been doing this for about half a year.
I think it's good that we do this, though, because we're setting the precedent that this is our cadence. This is what the podcast is about. So when we have guests, they integrate into that, as opposed to Joe Rogan, where his podcast is about the guests.
Yeah.
Right. Like when you watch a Joe Rogan podcast, it's not like him talking and then occasionally he has guests. It's all about the guests. And that's not what we are, but it's nice to have guests on sometimes. Yep. That's exciting. We're also looking at shooting in an actual studio if we can get access to it. I think it'll be easier with 3 people instead of having Jimmy John sit here and then like constantly get whiplash looking back and forth. So that'll be interesting. I have a life update, or several of them. Mm-hmm. My first one is I figured out the birthday gifts that I'm doing for you and Grace, and both of them are fucking sick. I'm so excited. Yours is especially sick. I could not find it. I found it and I was like, this is what I need to get him. And then I went to buy it and it wasn't available. So I had to track it down. And I've been looking for the past 2 weeks and I finally fucking got one. So I'm so excited to give it to you. I love it so much. I might even not give it to you and just keep it as myself and then never tell you and figure out something else and give that to you. But I just want to share that I'm excited about that. I'm stoked. And we need to block out like a 3-hour time block to do this year.
Cool.
And then Grace and I went to the movies the other night for a date night, and we were watching a trailer for a horror movie. And I leaned over to Grace and I was like, man, wouldn't this movie really suck if the good guys fucking carried if they had guns? And she was like, yeah, there wouldn't even be a movie. And I'm like, isn't it weird how people don't want people to have guns? When, like, if you think of, like, a school shooting is like a horror movie, right? Like a real life horror movie. And if the good guys having guns ruins the horror movie, is that not a clear fucking path to, like, that makes intuitive sense to me, right? Whatever ruins the horror movie is what you need to have in real life. And that's just the good guys having the ability to protect themselves. That was an interesting comparison that I made. And then my final note.
That was an interesting thought.
Yeah, right? My final thought is, I think this was a Hormozy thing, but I can't remember. The scenario was there's I don't know, a group of kids hanging out and an adult. And the kids are eating fruit. These are tribal village kids. And the kids are eating fruit. And like one kid peels a banana and takes a bite. And the other kid like cracks a coconut in half and takes a bite. And another kid picks up an orange and he just bites into the orange with the skin still on it. And all the kids start calling him an idiot because he didn't peel the orange. And the adult steps in and they're like, hey, hang on. Like, you know, why did you not bite straight into the banana? And why didn't you try to crack into the coconut with your bare teeth? Why did you open the coconut? And they were like, well, my dad taught me. They're like, well, this kid just hasn't been taught that he needs to peel the orange. But if he bites into the orange, he still gets to eat. He's just also having to spit out the peel, right? But if he doesn't eat the orange at all, then he'll starve. So don't call him an idiot for for trying something, even though he doesn't know how to do it perfectly. And I think that's a really great, I think it's an idiom for business, because so many people would rather not bite into the orange at all than try and risk being called an idiot by their idiot friends for biting into the peel. It's a fun story I have.
Yeah, I haven't heard that analogy before. You said it was a Hormozy?
I have no idea.
Oh, gotcha.
Let's just say I made it up.
Okay.
I got it from somewhere, but I can't remember where. I didn't write it down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have life updates?
Yeah. Oh, I am off of work probation.
Fantastic.
As of the start of last week. And directly in conjunction with that, my actual workload has been increasing. So
at work,
been an odd mix of like, I don't have to like report every day that I get in and, you know, leave. But at the same time, my work is piling up. So I might end up staying longer than I anticipate anyway. And I might not be able to telework as much as I want to anyway,
right? Because
the work is piling up, but now I have telework back. So I like can use it.
Right.
So it's just like an interesting little juxtaposition, but no real problems in that sense. I mean, I'll get through it, whatever. And that's pretty much it. I was working on some small things last week and then working on business stuff with you. So
sweet.
That's my life update.
Sweet.
I only went to the gym once last week.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like the 2 to 3 that I usually try to go. So
do you think you'll try and kill yourself?
No.
Good. I feel like a lot of people are like, dude, like I haven't done anything this week. Like I had donuts for breakfast this morning and I didn't go to the gym today, so I think about ending it all. And so I think it's funny when people say something like that, like, oh, like I didn't hit a goal today. They'd be like, do you think you'll end it all? Because like most people are like, right. No. Yeah. But it points out people for being stupid and like making little things into a bigger deal than they really are.
I know people like that. Yeah. No, but overall good. I'm excited for this coming week. I'm excited for the guest podcast. I'm excited to continue working on business stuff. And it's very nice to see that our funding is coming closer by the day.
Thank God. I'm so ready. I'm so ready to get out of
it. Yeah. I'm very excited to do something else that I find personally meaningful and also meaningful to a larger group of people. And to bring something to the public sphere that I think will be unique in a lot of ways.
I think it'll be valuable. And I feel like I don't add a lot of value at work right now. The trap I'm in is the longer I spend working at Northrop Grumman, the more value I find I actually do add, which
That's
sucks.
the problem I've been jumping into, because it's like, I this past week I got some work thrown at me, and when I have work thrown at me, I do good work. It's just when I don't have work thrown at me, I don't know what to do. Right. So it's like this past week, I actually cranked through a bunch of revisions and did a bunch of little stuff, and people started to notice, and they're like, oh, thanks for that help, thanks for this, thanks for that. So I feel like I'm providing value,
right?
Which kind of sucks, because I was hoping that I could go through a year of this job and kind of skate a little bit and figure out my bearings. And by the time I figured out my bearings, I would kind of jump over to doing something that I really want to do. But now it's I'm providing value to the team. So it's when I go to make the leap from my 9 to 5 to just my business,
the team will actually hurt.
The team will actually hurt, which I actually feel a little bit bad about.
Right.
But it's in no way going to stop me from making the leap. It just sucks a little bit, because I'm damn, I didn't want to lead these guys on. I just kind of wanted a job for a little bit. You know what I mean?
The guy, I spoke about him a few podcasts ago, but he wanted to hire me. And I was blunt with him. I was I'm quitting in 5 months to go start a business. I don't want to work for you, because I don't want to do good work for you and then blue ball you. And then he was do part-time work for me, right? The part-time work is over. And now it's time for, I guess they do quarterly reviews with your manager. I've never met my manager. I don't give a fuck. I don't read his emails. I don't give a shit. And my boss was like, can you fill out your workday profile so that our bosses can actually see that you're a good hard worker? Because I want you on my team. The only way to do that is if management looks at this profile and sees that you have stuff in there. And I was like, I don't really care about it, and I don't want to fill all that stuff out. I don't like talking about myself. And he was like, if you don't, I cannot get you promoted, and I cannot get you on my team. And I was like, sucks. And he was like, can you fucking please, come on, man. I'm putting my neck out there for you. And I was like, fine. So I'm going to fill it out. But he also requested that I write feedback for him, for his manager to read. And I was like, okay. So I wrote his review. It was 2 or 3 pages long, so it wasn't anything crazy. And I had 3 good things to say about him, and then I had 1 negative thing to say about him. And the negative thing was, I think he cares too much about his reputation and about how other people perceive him. And then that leads to shortcomings in his own work. I think he would be capable of more if he didn't care so much what other people thought and played into the office politics, which is scathing coming from somebody who's a level 1 engineer and a fucking nobody and shouldn't be involved in office politics at all. And also, that's not a great thing to send to a manager's manager, because that's really directly calling them out. But I did it anyways. I submitted it, and then I copied all of that and I sent that to him. And I was like, hey man, you asked for feedback. I wrote it for you. I'm a big believer in saying I would not say anything behind someone's back that I wouldn't also say to their face. So here's your feedback. This is what you should expect to go into when you speak with your functional. And I sent him the thing.
How do you respond?
He hasn't yet. I sent it Friday.
Oh, got it.
Okay. He doesn't work on Fridays. But I just fucking remembered. Has my dad talked to you?
About
his promotion?
So. No. Did he get it? He's been trying for 10 years.
Let me tell you. So, do you know how the federal promotion system works?
Well, at least my interpretation of it is...
You don't. I'm going to tell the audience.
Okay.
Oh. So when you enlist in the military, because the federal government runs 2 sides of the government, the military side and the civilian side. So the military side is given promotion levels, they call me a T1 or a technical level 1 at Northrop Grumman. What's the slang for your position for a level 1 engineer? What's the slang?
We just say level 1.
Right, level 1. So you have level 1, level 2, level 3. I have T1, T2, T3. The government has, in the military, E, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. E stands for enlisted, right? Mm-hmm. And in the civilian side, it's GS, or government standard, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So government standard and E run parallel to each other, right? So a GS1 can be directly compared to an E1. So a GS1, low-level worker in the government, they're civilian. very comparable and identical in the government's eye to a level 1 enlisted, right? So let me pull up this chart real quick. My dad has been at the top of the GS scale for a while. It goes up to GS 15, and past that are SES level positions. And the reason that's important is because SES stands for Senior Executive Status. So you start from GS1 and you go to 15, and then there's a huge roadblock because only 2.5% of all government employees, no, I might have that backwards. Let me check my messages. Okay, only 2.5% of NASA employees and only the top 0.4% of the federal civil service workforce reach SES status. Wow. And my dad has been trying for one of these jobs for years. And it's my opinion that they've picked a lot of DEI hires over him. I'm sure he wouldn't agree because he's humble, but I'm aggressive and I have seen the trend and the pattern. Like, the fact of the matter is, if you hire someone who has less experience and less relatable experience and worse reviews, then you shouldn't be hiring them. So the only reason to hire them is to meet quotas. Anyways, I digress. So my dad has finally gotten an SES level position. Let me explain how SES levels work. You go from GS1 to GS 15. Right above that is an SES level 5, and then it goes 4, 3, 2, 1. So for everyone to know, an SES level 4 is where senators and congressmen are. So 3, 2, and 1 are above that, right? So normally you go from GS 15 to SES level 5. You're just below a senator. Level 4 is a senator or congressman, and then 3, 2, and 1 are like generals in the military. So let me walk you through where this starts. So on the military side, you have E1, which is a private, and then E2, which is a private first class, E3, which is a lance corporal, E4, which is a corporal, E5, which is a sergeant, E6, which is a staff sergeant, E7, which is a gunnery sergeant, E8, which is a master sergeant or first sergeant, E9, which is a master gunnery sergeant, E9 again, a sergeant major. Then you work into W1s above that. This is an equivalent to a GS6. So half of where my dad has been for a while. He's a warrant officer. W2, chief warrant officer. W3, chief warrant officer 2. O1, second lieutenant. O2, first lieutenant. O3, captain. O4, major. O5, lieutenant corporal. And 6 is a corporal. That's equivalent. A corporal in the military is equivalent to a GS-15, where my dad has been all this time, right? Corporals are big deals. They run programs, right? Now, my dad is an SES. So we get into level 5 SES, which is a brigadier general in the military, and then a 2-star major general, and then a 3-star lieutenant general, and then the top levels 1 and 2 SES are 4-star generals in the military, right? My dad was not promoted to a level 5 SES. My dad was not promoted to a level 4 SES, which is level with senators and congressmen. My dad is a level 3 SES in the government, which is equivalent to a 3-star military general. Wow. Meaning there's only one military ranking higher than him and only 2 higher than him in the civilian workforce.
Wow. That's amazing.
Higher than senators and Congress.
Congratulations to him.
I'm so proud and I'm so excited. And I really wanted to talk about it on podcast.
Yeah. No.
It's fucking mind-boggling to me, because I just had a training at work where we were talking about this exact thing. And did you know that the 5-star generals only exist in wartime? So outside of wartime, it only goes up to 4-star, which is why level 2 and level 1 SES are within 4-star, because when you become 5-star, it shifts. But 5-star doesn't exist outside wartime. So right now, there's only one military ranking higher than that. Wow. Crazy stuff.
Wow. Is he going to be doing... Is he going to be working in like a completely different space at KSC? You know?
I don't know. Is
he not even going to like touch the project he's been working on now?
He is. So right now, I think he is... Well, okay. He's actually been an acting manager in this position for a while. They do like a 6-month probationary period to make sure that you're actually good at it before giving you the position.
I'm familiar.
Right. So he is the associate manager for the exploration ground systems. So everything at Kennedy Space Center that's used to get rockets off the ground, he is now the manager of.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah. That's incredible about your dad. Super proud of him. I'll make sure to tell him congratulations when I see him next time. And thank you for sharing it on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're going to do some kind of celebration thing next week if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to be a part of that.
Sweet.
So, yeah.
Sweet.
He's a cool guy. So
yeah, I think so.
Yes.
I'm not even biased. Okay. Let's get into the meat of this podcast. So the topic that I chose for this week is very reflective of where we're at right now, which is the inflection point between leaving our 9-to-5s and starting our own business. It's a critical point, and the recognition that needs to be made is that this is not a short-term endeavor. We're signing on for real decades of work. Like, this is a change of lifestyle. It's not a temporary position. It's not going part-time. It's not changing jobs. This is a total change. And I think that we know, based on others' perspectives and our own lifestyle, that we're signing on for years of work. And many people are unwilling to take that risk. And I want to know what motivates you to actually jump into this fucking pit. And do you think it's going to be worth the suffering? And why don't others make it? Because it's hard.
Yeah, I saw that. I looked over your sheet before I made mine. I saw that was one of your topics.
Yeah.
And I actually went digging back into my notes, and I found something that I watched like probably 2 years ago at this point. And I'd recommend it to anyone on the podcast, and you as well. I don't think you've seen it. It's called Murphy's Committee. And it's a 30-minute video that was made in like the 80s.
Okay.
And it essentially goes through this kind of cartoonish story about this guy who works really hard when he's in high school, and then he's blowing all his money because he's trying to look rich, like after he saves up a bunch, and he's starting to realize he's running out of money, and he has to go back to work, and he doesn't know what to do, and he has all these credit card bills that he can't pay because he ran out of money and didn't realize it. And so he loses everything. He's like, oh man, like I lost everything I have, and like I don't know what to do anymore. And he comes to this realization that's like, well, I still have myself and everything that I've learned how to do, so let me just build it back again. Right. And so the analogy that they use in Murphy's Committee, this short little video on YouTube, is there's 4 stages to business. And I like this video because it's not like the 4 steps to building a business. It's the 4 stages you go through when you're building a business. So it's like your emotional stages that you go through. There are family and friends, burnout, emotional play, and the swamp. Those are the 4. And the first one is family and friends. And the analogy they use is you have a cow pasture that you're currently in. You're just roaming free. And it's beautiful and nice and relaxed. And then there's this massive swamp to the grass that's greener on the other side, right? And when you start that trek into the swamp to get to the other side, your family and friends are pulling you back to return to their cow pastures. They're come back here like, and also you can't see the grass that's greener on the other side of the swamp. You know that theoretically it's there because people have crossed the swamp and they haven't come back, but those people might have just not come back because they would have failed. But the myth is that there's grass that's greener on the other side. Right. And so your family and friends, as soon as you start that trek into the swamp, they're like, no, come back to our cow pastures, like come back to this meadow area. And they tell you about how you won't have medical benefits or security or like
a 401k.
About how, a 401k, or they'll tell you about how you will fail once you start this trek. And then you decide to continue going through the swamp. And as you're going through it, things aren't going your way. And so that's like the burnout stage, when you aren't able to do the things that you used to be able to do because your only goal is to get through the swamp and not die in the jungle, right? And so you keep going and going and going and pushing, and you have to sacrifice a lot of things that you would have normally had the time to do when you were chilling in, the meadows or the cow pastures, but you can't do anymore. And then when you're trudging through the swamp, the third stage is someone important in your life tries to pull you back. Someone that you really, really loved and care about. They come back for you, and they maybe trudge a little bit through the swamp and like yell at you, and they're like, hey, like come back, like you love me, right? Like you can't go through this journey and also love me. And so they try to emotionally play you, which is why it's called emotional play, into getting you to come back to the pastures.
That person for me is your mom.
Right. and so you have to choose to ignore that. And then it's just about going through the swamp for the rest of the duration. And you don't know how long it's going to be. It's challenging and rough. And you just continue to push and push and push. And you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, metaphorically, or, the grass that's greener on the side. You can't see it. And you just have to keep going until you hit it. And then when you hit it, it's more than you could have ever imagined. And it's more beautiful than you ever thought it would be. And there's no desire for you to return to, your old meadows or your old pastures.
Right.
And so I think the main thing that it takes to get through that swamp period, to get to that business building period, is to have faith in that the grass is definitely greener on the other side, to have like undoubtable belief that you will get there eventually, because as long as you put one foot in front of the other, the swamp is a finite length. Right? You don't know what that length is, but it is finite. So as long as you put a step forward every single day, you will get there eventually. Right? It's like similar to like, I watched a podcast the other day that was 4.5 hours long, and I started it and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to fucking finish this thing. Like, this is a really long podcast. And I listened to like a little bit. And then I remember pulling it up with like an hour left. And I was like, oh shit, like I've watched 3.5 hours of this thing.
Was it episode 22 of the Vision 79 podcast?
It was not.
Okay.
It was a Joe Rogan. But I remember thinking like, oh shit, I've watched 3.5 hours of this, and I've just continued to push at it a little bit, every day or every part of my day. And I'm almost there. Like, I'm going to make it. And like, that is easier to do because you know how long the podcast is. But let's say you had a podcast that the timestamp was X, like you just didn't know. And every time you got to it, you couldn't really see the bar move. Or like sometimes you open the app and it seemed like the bar was shorter. And you're like, well, hold on, what? Like, I thought I done more, and now it seems like it's longer, And so there's this factor of unpredictability and just pure work that you have to be okay with getting through.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is very tempting for a lot of people to go back to their friends or family, or not go through the burnout of making it happen, or to go back to that person that's trying to pull you back, that loves you and is like, well, I want you here with me, and to live a lifestyle that you don't want to live in that first pasture.
Right.
And I've thought about this a lot, and I don't know if it's really like a fundamental difference in people that gets them to go through this. But I think that you have to have a certain skill set and mindset to definitely go through it. But I don't know if there's like a fundamental like genetic difference between people, or, maybe not literal genetic difference, but I don't know if you could like scan someone's brain and be like, oh, you'll be an entrepreneur, versus, scanning someone else's brain and you're like, oh, well, you're just going to settle for a 401k or whatever.
I think I have the answer, which is the reason that I bring all of this up.
Yeah.
But I want to continue talking about the problem before I bring up my proposed solution.
Yeah. Go for it.
But
I didn't realize I interrupted you on the...
No, you're good. What I'm saying is like, I have fucking 25 minutes of content to talk about.
Right.
And before I tell you what I think it is, because I think you've already touched on it, I have an answer.
Yeah.
For what I think it is. But I love the swamp analogy. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, I that's something I didn't think you would have heard, because it's an old video that was recommended to me by an online course that I watched a long time ago. And I remembered it while I was writing the podcast sheet for today.
Yeah.
I was like, this would be really cool to bring, because I bet you haven't heard of it before. So
no, I had
a video after the podcast.
Yeah, no,
and I'll
really
link
good
it in the description as well.
Yeah.
So that you guys can watch it.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because my rowing coach in college used to call us swamp donkeys, because we had this problem in the boat. In rowing, it sucks because you're not facing the direction you're going. So frequently you don't know where you are in the course. So you don't know how much you have left.
That's interesting.
It's a visceral and physical representation of you don't know how much longer you have in the swamp. Yeah. Because in high school, our coxswains, the guys steering the boat, used to tell us, they would lie to us. And like when we were at half distance, they'd like, okay, so half distance is 500 meters. He would be like 200 meters left. And we'd be like, and then we'd go, and then we'd hit actual 200 meters left. And he'd be like, come on, boys, only 200 meters left. And we'd be like, you said that fucking 35 seconds ago. What the fuck? And then he'll be like, we're almost done, last 100. And in college, we have this issue where we would be, I mean, we're going much faster now because we're in college, but we'd be hauling ass. But after a little while, we would burn out a little bit and ease up. And it would happen at like 70% of the distance to where we needed to get to. And our coach was like, in the piece, you've been doing it for long enough that you know you have to almost be done. And that's when you start to ease up because you know you're almost done, but you don't know quite how close you are because it's a gut feeling kind of thing. When you've rowed that long, you kind of figure out how many meters you've gone. But you cannot give up. You cannot take any strokes off until you cross the finish line. So how do I break this mental barrier? And at the time, the coxswain wasn't doing the high school thing where he tells you you're actually further along in the course than you really are. He was telling us where we actually were. And we had this idea, which was have the coxswain lie to us in the opposite direction. So like when we're 3/4 through, have him say you're halfway there. Because we know we work when we're halfway there. We only stop working when we're close to the end. So if we're never close to the end and we're never almost finished, then we'll just keep fucking crushing it. And like, that's a lie. And we know it's a lie because when you get into like the last like 200 meters, you can fucking tell. Like everyone starts to get real jazzed up and you come into the back area by the crowds and the other boats start really pushing hard. So you start pushing harder too. But the 70 to 95% mark is that's where you take souls, as Goggins says. But I have this Bill Gates quote, which I fucking hate. And it's interesting because Bill Gates is successful and everyone, remarks as, oh, well, he dropped out of college and built Microsoft in his garage. One of his most famous quotes to me is, don't quit because it's hard. Quit because it sucks.
I saw that on your sheet and I was like, why the fuck did he write that?
Isn't that retarded?
Yeah, I was hoping that you would say that because I saw that on your sheet and I was like, this doesn't sound on your sheet.
No, it's not. But I'm calling him out, Bill. I'm calling him out because either I don't understand the quote or he's not as grit as I thought he was.
You know what's something that's interesting about Bill Gates, and Alex Hormozi has touched on this too, is that he tends to give advice that he feels would benefit the most number of people, not the people who are most ambitious.
Right.
What I'm trying to say is the most ambitious people are not necessarily correlated or the same people as the masses.
Right.
And that's evident by the fact that we have more people than businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Right. He talks a lot about how like you should invest in the S&P 500 and you should have like a 401k and just wait it out and do long term because those are all very safe investments that anyone can do with minimal knowledge. And so I wonder if that quote kind of is a similar vibe. He's like, what he might be saying there is like, just do something you love and work on it, and like, and enjoy it. Right. And enjoy your life and, have fun with it. And then when you're not having fun with it, it's okay to stop. Right. Like, I don't know if that's what he's trying to get at. I personally disagree with it because I think that in any business, there are periods of time when it sucks. I heard an Elon Musk quote, sorry to interrupt you, but I heard an Elon Musk quote the other day that he actually took from another entrepreneur, and it's building a business is like staring into an abyss while eating glass. Right.
Yeah.
It's like sitting there staring into the abyss and you don't know how far it goes. It's just all black and dark. And you're just sitting there by yourself eating glass the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I really like that analogy because it's like at a certain point, you get used to eating the glass, right? Like your mouth would toughen up and like you'd get like calluses and like it wouldn't bother you as much. But like initially, it would be the worst pain in the world.
Right.
Right. And so I really like that idea of it. And I like it too because it metaphorically connects the idea that the longer you're in business, the tougher you get and the more capable you are of dealing with stress.
Right.
Right. And in the same way, the longer you eat the glass, the less it bothers you.
I think the worst part about that Musk quote isn't the glass, it's the abyss. Because not knowing how much further you have to go is what crushes people.
Yes.
Because anybody can eat glass if they only have to eat a
second.
handful.
Yeah.
Right. But if you say eat glass until I tell you to stop, I brought up before the rowing exercise that we used to do. Our coach would have us start rowing and he would say, this drill, normally he's like, it's going to be like 4 by 10 minutes with a 2-minute break in between. And we're going to step up the rating to 26 to 32 throughout the piece. Right. So like we had it all laid out in front of us. We know exactly what we're doing so we can energy conserve. So like, to be an elite level rower, you have to know exactly how to use your energy so that at the end of the race, you have nothing left, but you use it at strategic points throughout the race. So for a coach to say, start and go until I tell you to stop is fucking panicking because you don't know, like, what if I run out of energy early? Or what if I finish the piece and I still have energy left? Or what if I run out of energy halfway through? Like, and in rowing, you can't just stop. Like when you run out of energy, the boat is still moving, so you cannot stop, right? It's like how they used to hook up slaves behind a train and make them walk behind the train. And like the train's not going super fast, but it's rolled. Like you cannot stop because you can't be dragged. You'll die. Mm-hmm. So you don't have a choice to stop, which was always harrowing with rowing because if you do stop, then, the whole boat can't move anymore. And it just doesn't happen. You have to keep going. But our coach used to call us swamp donkeys because of that exact reason. He would be like, I need you guys to just not fucking think about what's left and just kick the shit out of it like a fucking donkey, like a swamp donkey. Like just be tough. Yeah, that's what he used to call us.
It's like the movie Shrek.
Yeah. And not knowing how much further to go is what crushes a lot of people. And there's a Hormozy quote that bleeds into this really well. He says, many people can hold their breath for 60 seconds, but would give up at 30 seconds if they didn't know when it would end. And that is very similar to the training system that our coach had us use. Yeah. And I think that it's reflective in people choosing the long-term suffering of the 9 to 5 because they know when it's going to end. It's not for 42 years, but they know when it ends. And the work for business is never ending. But knowing that you get to go home at 5 p.m. every night and knowing that you're guaranteed Saturday and Sunday off and knowing that you'll retire, the knowing is so much more valuable to them than us not knowing for who knows how long. Maybe we'll be working for the next 42 years too, and we won't make any money. Or maybe we strike gold in the first 5 and then we're millionaires and never have to work again.
Yeah. I wrote this down. This is an idea that I had the other day and it connects really well to your point. And the someone who's capable of building a business is someone who can go through something terrible that's shorter term to achieve something great long term,
right?
Instead of suffering through something mildly crappy forever,
right?
Guaranteed forever, right? And it's interesting because when you're building a business, you do stare into the abyss and you don't know how long the abyss is going to last. Mm-hmm. But when you go to a 9 to 5, you know that will last until essentially the day you die. Right. Or 65. Right. But there's a lot of people who also retire at 65 and they don't live much longer than that because, there's been a bunch of studies that show not working and not doing something productive deteriorates your body much more quickly than any sort of like stress or, ambitious goals deteriorate it. Right. But it's interesting because any aspect of the 9 to 5 that you look at or the traditional job sphere, everything is a finite timeline.
Right.
But, you work until you're 65. You work until 9 to 5 every single day. You have a 401k that is going to grow on average this month, or every year this much, right? Like everything is finite and known. And even if it's shitty, people will prefer to know about it than to not know about it and experience it.
Right. Having the deadline and having the end date gives you enough solace to sign up for a 40-year contract of suffering.
Right.
I think that the reason Bill Gates says this quote is because Bill Gates fundamentally is not a businessman.
Why not? Why do you think so?
I thought of this just now. What did Alex Hormozy do to build his empire?
But dove into it and, kept pushing.
Right. He sold and he committed to personal growth and he developed and he had to build a team and he had to sell a product. He had to figure out how to make a product that was unique from everyone else. Mm-hmm. Right. And his product was a service, Gym Launch. What did Bill Gates do to build this wealth?
Invest in long-term growth of general.
He built Microsoft. He built the computer.
Sorry.
Right?
Yes. Bill Gates.
So Bill Gates.
Sorry. I blanked and thought we were talking about Warren Buffett.
No.
Yeah.
Bill Gates. The other guy. The other old rich guy.
Yeah.
He sat in his garage. He dropped out of college because it sucked and he didn't want to do it. Mm-hmm. And he sat in his garage and he tinkered with computer stuff because that's what he liked. And he ended up building something that people wanted to pay him money for. And that's what skyrocketed. Like, you didn't have to sell a Microsoft computer at that time because it was so cutting edge and so brand new. So he didn't have to come up with marketing or sales. He just hired a sales director. They didn't have to come up with packaging or branding or anything like that, because the beauty of Bill Gates' mind is that he can actually create a new physical component of this world, which is not something that Hormozi has done. Hormozi has committed to a service to improve an existing system, and Bill Gates has created a new product that a system needs to be built around. So when taking advice from the two of them, I think that Bill Gates is probably really great at giving you advice to follow your dreams and hone your skills in what you're interested in. And Alex Hormozi is really great for telling you it doesn't matter what you're interested in. If you want to be successful, find what works and do it no matter what. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like grit versus motivation.
Yeah.
Alex Hormozi is grit. Dude, why don't they say that instead of brat? You heard that? People are like, oh, it's brat. That's fucking retarded. I'm going to say that's grit. When something's cool or something's badass, I'm going to go, that's grit.
I like that.
I'm Gen Alpha.
Alex Hormozi talks about a period in his life too where he kind of threw happiness out the window and he just worked.
Yep.
And then after a couple years or a few years, he realized that he was starting to feel happy again, but he was still doing the same work.
Yeah.
So he really has a sense of grit about him to just get through the tough time and just push through it, because eventually it will be fruitful. And he has faith in the fact that eventually it will be fruitful. If I try my best, I will succeed.
Yeah. When I went through that bad breakup and I was depressed, what got me out of it ultimately was like how I feel does not matter compared to what I do every day. So like every day I'm going to get up, I'm going to go rowing, and then I'm going to go to class, and then I'm going to go home and eat. And it doesn't matter how I feel that day because those same items get done. So why don't I pick something that is going to benefit me in 15 years and start working on it now? Because maybe by the time I get there, I won't be depressed anymore. But even if I am, at least I'm depressed and rich. And it's tough to be sad in a Ferrari. So why don't I start working now? Because it doesn't matter how I feel about the work that I do. So I'm just going to start to work, and then maybe one day I won't be sad, or maybe I will. Who fucking cares? And that's what ultimately got me through it. And the act of not caring how you feel, I think inherently makes you better. Even if you're not happy, you're at least neutral. Because where I'm at most of the time is a neutral state of not happy or upset.
Right. Well, I think my other point too is that if you go in with the mindset of, I'm just going to get through this and I'm not going to worry about being happy or sad, I think that eventually there comes a point where you will become happy because you're not focused on trying to analyze every single aspect of how you feel every day.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what Alex Hormozi was getting at too.
Yeah, I concur with that. I agree with that. Are you familiar with the spoon theory?
No.
Where are your spoons?
Yes, I do have spoons.
Okay.
I brought them to you.
Thank you. So the fundamentals of spoon theory I learned when I was dating a girl with POTS, which is a chronic illness. It's actually an autoimmune disorder, right? It's called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. My current girlfriend actually has it too. It hits different people in different ways. So, for example, her sister had fibromyalgia. Do you know what that is? No. That's the everything hurts syndrome, and there's no reason why. So you wake up and you're just like, my whole body hurts and I can't do anything. So the story that
I have fibromyalgia.
I call it LBS, little bitch syndrome. Yeah. For example, her sister moved to another state, and she was like 3 months after she moved, my girlfriend was like, I'm going to go visit my sister. And I was like, oh, this is weird timing. And she was like, yeah, she needs her laundry done. I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, she's had real bad chronic illness flare-ups over the past few months, so she hasn't done laundry yet. And I was like, what? 3 months? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, what the fuck? And she was like, I get it. It happens to me sometimes. And I was like, dude, I see you bow out of activities every now and then.
I could be a quadriplegic. I still get my fucking laundry done after 3 months.
So
sorry.
She taught to me spoon theory. So we're going to practice it right now. So here's how the theory works. Everybody wakes up every morning with a certain number of spoons. How many do you have? I have 3.
I 6.
So Sandra has twice as many spoons as I do. We wake up this morning, right? What are some things that let's say that today your plan is to go work at the bar and get two documents completed, right?
Cool.
What's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning?
Turn off my alarms.
Okay. What's the next thing?
Go to the bathroom and take a shower.
So that going to the bathroom and taking a shower is going to cost us a spoon because that's energy. So you take a spoon and then you fucking burn it, put it away from you, right? So you don't have access to that spoon anymore. What's the next thing you do? After you shower.
After I shower, I brush my teeth and get dressed.
Getting dressed is tough. That's another spoon. Burn it. Now what?
Then I go into the kitchen and feed my cats and prepare my kratom tea for the day.
Let's just say that that's easy enough that it doesn't cost a spoon.
Okay.
What's next?
I get into my car and drive to work.
Driving is tough. That's a spoon.
Got it.
Now, what do you do after you get in the car and drive? You go to the bar, right, to work?
Yeah.
Right.
Go to the bar and go to
So at this point, we're at the bar, we have our laptop out, and I'm out of spoons, which means that I can't get my work done because I don't have any spoons left. And it's unfair because I don't have any spoons left, but Sander has 3 spoons. So you had to do 2 documents. Let's just say that cost 2 spoons. And then you had to drive home. And that's another spoon. So now you're out of spoons, but you're done for your day. I ran out when I got to the bar. That is spoon theory. And that is the way that people with a chronic illness demonstrate to people without a chronic illness why life is tough for them. And I have always found it to be bullshit, but upon recent reflection, I've recognized that I think I have a chronic illness because I wake up in the morning and I feel like shit and everything hurts and I don't want to do anything and I have no energy and I'm tired and I can't fucking think. What do you think I do?
Push through it.
Spoon theory is retarded. I fucking hate it. And I wanted to share it with you because this is what people think. Yeah. Like people in the world, the spoon theory, look it up on your TikTok or YouTube.
I will.
So many people believe this theory. And in believing this theory, they take the power out of their own hands.
And exactly the point I was going to raise.
Exactly. And by doing that, it means they can't do what they need to do. So my analogy here is, do you think that these people are really only capable of X amount of work? Are we special? Are we really actually able to do X plus 1 amount of work? Or are these people just disillusioned? Like, are we different from the regular people or not? Hang tight. If they are disillusioned, then that means that we aren't special. And if that's the case, what makes us different? Why do we work, or rather what makes us capable of working so much harder than everyone else? So are these people below average and we're regular, or are these people average and we're exemplary?
Yeah.
And what's the deficit? Why?
Well, this spoon theory was a great exercise. And I think it shows that people convince themselves of the person they become. Mm-hmm. Like someone who thinks that they can't do something today and get up and accomplish these tasks because they don't have enough potential energy to figure it out, I think convinces themselves that they can't do it.
Right.
If you change your mindset and you convince yourself that you have enough spoons, even if you don't, I think that more spoons will start to come your way.
Right.
And that's the difference that I see.
I am of the perception that even if I'm an exemplary person, the fact that a year ago, I was able to wake up at 4:15 in the morning, exercise for 4 hours until 9 a.m., wake up at 4 in the morning, drive 45 minutes to campus, exercise for 4 hours, then go to a full day of classes, then hold SAE meetings, then go to another practice again, weightlifting, then go to the bar and work with you to make an agenda for the next day for the SAE team, and then go home and get to sleep at midnight to wake up at 4 a.m. again. If I can do that nonstop for 8 months, it doesn't matter how exempt, like I must be a fucking demigod, or like I must be the second coming of Christ. There's got to be something super special about me, except there are other people who do it too, which tells me that I'm not special. That tells me, if anything, I'm above average, but I refuse to believe that I'm above average. I think that I'm fucking regular. And sometimes I even think I'm behind that. And if that's the case, then that means these people with spoons, what are you doing? You're not serving yourself. You're not helping yourself by mentally handicapping. Like, it would serve you so much better to say, I'm feeling tired, but I think I can get through this. Or I haven't achieved my goals for the day, so I'm not done yet. So I'm going to push through this. So 100%. A Hormozi quote is, it's a lot easier to say all successful people got lucky than it is to admit that you have no ability to delay gratification, handle rejection, or think for yourself. And that blends in beautifully with this other Alex Hormozi quote, which is, to start a business. Now I'm speaking to everybody not with the chronic illness, but just lazy motherfuckers who don't want to do their work and think that other people got lucky. To start a business, you need 4 things: a tax ID, a bank account, a way to take payments, and a way to reach people. And if you can't figure that out in the 16 hours a day you're not at your job, the 104 weekend days, and 11 federal holidays, maybe starting a business just isn't for you. And that's not to disillusion the people who are trying and haven't gotten there yet. We are those people right now. But to the people who aren't trying and then snub those for trying, go back to counting your spins.
Yeah.
That's a bitter sentiment. But it's because this vigor is leading into the next section, which is the importance of grinding. Because this doesn't come from a perspective of, oh, I work harder than you, so I think I'm better than you. This comes from a perspective of, I genuinely believe that grinding keeps people alive. David Goggins was on the Andrew Huberman podcast, and they talked about some part of the brain that they study in Goggins that's larger than everyone else's.
It's the frontal cerebral or cerebral cortex. It's like that inner front part. Right. I remember talking. Yeah. I remember this video.
His is enlarged, and they think it's because he does things that he doesn't want to do so frequently, and they think that that is directly tied to the will to live. So doing things...
Importantly, the reason that's tied together is because the size of that part of your brain is directly correlated to lifespan. That's an important connection.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the larger, statistically speaking, the larger that part of your brain is, the longer you will live, and that part of the brain only grows by doing things you don't want to do. So therefore, doing things you don't want to do is directly correlated to a will to live.
Right. So that's from an Andrew Huberman podcast.
Yes.
It's based on 1 or 2 studies. There are skeptics out there that don't think it's true. Let's analyze not the brain, but let's analyze the possibility that it is or isn't true. Let's say, because ultimately we don't know. So you can choose to believe that it's true, or you can choose to believe that it's not true. But by believing that it's not true, what does that get you? That just tells you that you don't have to work hard and don't have to grind. Fine. Maybe that's the correct. Maybe it's correct that it's not tied to your will to live. But let's say that it is. That motivates you to work harder. So even if it doesn't make you live any longer, it's still motivation to get your work done and see material success, which is undeniable. So why not choose the reality that suits you? I have an example here from Michael Jordan. Have you seen The Last Dance on Netflix, the docuseries? It's a docuseries about Michael Jordan's career in basketball. It's fucking exemplary. You should check it out in your spare time that you watch Netflix, which you'll never see this. Part of your birthday is actually making you sit down and watch something with me, just because I'm a fucking...
Can I have food at the same time?
Sure.
Sick.
So Michael Jordan, he was going to, I don't know, like let's just say his fucking 7th season or something. So he's already world famous at this point. He's already the best basketball player to ever live. And they came off the court from a loss. And the way basketball works is like you play a team early on in the season, and then you go through and play other teams, and you circle back and play the same team again in like a higher stakes game, right? So in this low stakes game, they lost. And so Michael Jordan was talking to his teammates, and he was like, hey man, there's a dude on the other team. The next time we play them, give him to me. Like, I'm going to block him. He's not going to touch the ball. He won't make any shots. He's mine. And they were like, dude, what'd he do? And he was like, he shoved me and called me a pussy. And they were like, dude, no one shoves Michael Jordan and calls him a pussy. That's fucking insane. Like, what a fuck. Like, this dude's asking for it, right? They play the rest of the season. They're dominating. And they get back to this game. And this is the game that Michael's team knows that Michael's been waiting for because he wants to get back at this guy and fucking crush it. And they do. They beat him like fucking 0-0. Like, they fucking absolutely destroy this team. And they shake hands and got off the court. And they were like, yeah, Michael, you got him. Fuck that guy for saying what he said. And he's like, what'd he say? And they were like, he said he called you a pussy. And he was like, yeah. And they were like, huh? And so years later, they asked Michael, and in the documentary, they were like, did he actually call you a pussy? Like, people were like, you were so nonchalant about it after the game. Did he actually say anything to you? He's like, nah. And they were like, did he shove you? And he was like, mm-mm. They were like, what the fuck? So you just lied about it? He's like, I needed something to motivate me, so I just made it up. So Michael Jordan would fucking make up beef with people to motivate him to play the game within the game. The quote that I pulled is, he constructed reasons why to play hard that night. These little slights were deep indignations to him. That's all he needs, like throwing meat to a tiger. He'd find a game within a game to keep him interested, but it was all in his mind. And so if you don't want to believe me, two dudes on a podcast, that you should believe that grinding makes you live longer, believe Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player to ever live, that making shit up to make you work harder gets results. That's my meaning behind the NJ story.
If you convince your mind that you can push through this and you can do this, and you don't convince your mind that you need spoons every day to be able to get through your tasks, maybe you'll be able to complete a few more tasks.
Yep, exactly. My next Hormozy quote is related to that, because I think that not everybody is actually cut out for this. And to those people, I'm not speaking to you. I don't mean to punch down on people who don't want it, but people who are on the cusp or have potential that they're wasting, break out of it. And this Hormozy quote is, at first you avoid hard fights. This is like when you're young, right? Mm-hmm. And then in your teenage years, then you get used to hard fights. And finally, you start looking for hard fights. Warriors need wars. And that last sentence I really love, because warriors need wars. I feel on an athletic level, because after retiring from rowing, I felt like I had peaked. And although I'm excelling in business and my personal life and everywhere else, and I'm weightlifting better than I have been in the past, I still feel right now as though I've already peaked, because I know that I'm not physically training for anything right now. And so I feel like a warrior not at war, and that doesn't click for me, and it puts me on edge, and I don't like it, right? I look forward to the day where I get back into rowing and start to compete again, because that is what I need to get me going, right? But I can't build a business at the same time, because it takes like 6 hours of training a day and eating like a fucking animal, and I don't have that money to pay for that food. But same with Michael. Michael was a warrior. Like he needed to play basketball and compete against other people, and he needed wars. So he needed to make this shit up in his head to actually get it done. So for people who believe that they're warriors, but you don't put yourself in those positions in your own headspace, you're doing yourself a disservice and leaving something on the table, right?
I agree. And this is actually, this conversation has brought up an interesting reframe for me, which kind of jumps off of a conversation that we had yesterday. Mm-hmm. And it's very similar to the conversation we had yesterday. In every single, or at least a large majority of aspects in my life, I don't convince myself that a certain thing won't work for me. Mm-hmm. Like with cars, I'm like, no, I can figure this out. Like, I can do this. It's just car parts. Like, even if I don't understand the problem, I figure it out.
We're going to comp.
In business, yeah, we're going to competition. With business, I'm like, no, like we're going to do this. We're going to make it happen. Like I know that the probability, statistically speaking, are low that we make it, but like I know that we can't. I know that we can do this. Like, we can make this happen. Like, this will work for me. Or with, doing the podcast, it's like, no, like I know that we can grow this podcast one day. Like, it's okay that we don't have a lot of views right now. Like, I know this will happen. Like, this will work. This will work. It's not. I don't care about the statistics about podcasts and how much they fail. Blah, blah, blah. Like, I know that we can make this work, right?
If it helps even one person who watches, it's a success.
Yeah, and then with growing myself to work harder.
growing yourself.
Yeah. I burped. Excuse me. But with growing myself to like work harder and do more every day and accomplish more, I'm like, no, like I can accomplish more. I can do more. But then when it comes to my mental strength and emotional health, I'm like, no, like I don't know if like therapy will work for me, or I don't know if this thing will help me, or like I don't, I've tried that before. I don't know. And it's like I literally have my fucking spoons with this one thing, right? And I've been so reluctant to try it because I've tried it before, despite the fact that it could genuinely help me. Right. It's really fucking hypocritical of me to have for years. I've like the past 2 years or 3 years is the last time I went to therapy. And ever since that point, I've battled going back to it because I'm like, it just doesn't work for me. Like I can figure this out on my own. Like it's fine. Like I don't need help figuring out how to deal with these emotional problems and blah, 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 blah. Like I'll tough it out, whatever. Right. And in every other aspect of my life, when I get some input that's like, whoa, try this thing in business or try that thing in business, I'm like, okay, let's jump on it. Let's do it. Let's try this. Let's try that. Right. Like I don't have reservation, even if I think the probabilities are low.
Right.
So if the probability is so high, even of therapy potentially helping me, I'm so fucking resistant to trying it and letting it help me.
Right. Which
is a really interesting and hypocritical.
Why do you think you hate that? Why do you think you're so reluctant in that one area instead of other areas? We don't have to get into it on air.
Yeah, I think that I've always tried to be a strong person and to push through things. And I think that accepting the fact that I need someone else to help me push through those things and be a strong person is off-putting to me because it feels like I backtrack in order to get... It feels like I go one step back in order to get 2 steps forward. And I just want to take 1 step forward, but I can't take that 1 step forward unless I take that 1 step back.
How do you define pushing through something?
Grinding through it. Like,
sure.
Continuing to try something until it works.
The same thing?
Well, trying things to the fullest potential that they have, and then if that thing doesn't work, I try another thing to a full potential that it doesn't have, or until it doesn't have any more potential. And then if that doesn't work, I try another thing, right? And then eventually one of the things will push through and get me through. Right. But with therapy in my mind or like mental health, it's like I struggle to take the step back and not just push. Right. Like,
I think that it is.
I think therapy is just another avenue to get me help to the next place. But in my mind, I feel like I take a step away from the stand and away from the place that I do most of my, pushing. I feel like I take a step back and I stop pushing in order to get through the barrier. And I think that's part of why I'm resistant to it. But in reality, I need to reframe my thinking into, no, it's just another option that I haven't given a wholehearted shot to yet.
I think that pushing is exactly what the word means, which is continuing to try without stopping. Yeah. And so for this example, the only stopping would be, I'm just going to bottle up my emotions and fucking forget about it, right? Which is why most men become alcoholics and die alone and sad, because they stop pushing and they stop trying. So pushing or trying to figure out, your own problems by talking to friends or family, or by trying to figure it out by journaling, or by doing a video diary. I did a video diary after my breakup, and I still have the videos and go back and watch them, and they're fucking sad. And I'm glad that after that, I decided to go to therapy because those 3 options didn't work for me. So I continued to push, but it's like you try one door and it's locked. So you try another door and it's locked. You try another door and it's locked. And like, keep trying. You're not this Hormozy quote, you're not bad at it. You just haven't done it enough times.
Yeah.
So you're not bad at figuring out your mental problems. You're just not using what works for you. So like, try the next method, and the next method.
Right. I like that analogy. I think the point I'm making is that when you have all the doors and you're trying all the doors and each one is locked, and then there's the therapy one.
Right.
And it's like, I in my mind, it's not just that I try the door. It's that I step out of the room and I'm not even at the doors anymore. Like that's how I frame it in my mind. It's like to try therapy, there isn't a door there. Like there's a painted door, but there's not even a real door to potentially open. In order to get to through into the therapy room, I have to completely exit that room of doors and opportunities and go up the flight of stairs and then go back around the back of the building and then go through that door. Right? Like that's how I framed therapy in my mind. And I don't know if that's because I've tried it before, but just like not wiggled the handle enough to see if it actually unlocks for me, right? In terms of the metaphor.
Right.
But it's interesting because in business, I have all the doors and I just try the doors, right? And then in fixing cars, I try all the doors until one of the doors works.
Right.
But then with mental health, I like try the journaling and it's like a little bit locked, but like sort of open. And then I try like drawing, or I try talking to other people, you know, and like those doors are like, they kind of lock for me, or I open them and then it kicks me back out for whatever reason.
Right.
But then with the therapy door, I get to the therapy door and it's painted on the wall. And I'm like, well, I don't want to try a painted door. I'd look like a dumbass, right? So, and then there's a little sign on that painted door that says, go around the side of the building. And it's like, well, I don't want to fucking step out of the room that I've been working in to try in all these doors. Like, why should I go outside of the building? Like, I'm going to be stepping away from all the other opportunities are in the same place. So why isn't therapy in the same place in my mind? Right. So it's like, I just bashed that painted door because I'm like, it's not a door, despite the sign on the door that said just go around the side of the building.
Right.
Right. Does that make sense?
The reason to try the door is if you want it bad enough.
Right.
So taking the automotive example or the business example, right? Like, let's say that door 1 is learn drop shipping, and then door 2 is learn how to write a profit loss sheet. And then door 3 is figure out how to make an LLC, right? And those doors don't unlock because they don't really lead anywhere. Like, you open the door and you look in and you're like, well, that's not the business that I want. So you close it, right? And then there's the painted on door that says, this is the path to business. Like the path to owning your own business, you have to walk outside the building and then walk around and go up a flight of stairs. And that's where the building is, right? And that walk is quitting your 9 to 5 and saving money so that you can quit your 9 to 5. And like committing to this business model and finding an investor and then making the actual construction happen and then sourcing product. All of that is the staircase to get to that door to having your own business. And I know that you're willing to leave the building and walk up the stairs for that because you want it bad
business. It's just right. with mental health and with emotional help. I don't want to leave. I'm so reluctant to do that walk around the building.
I think that, do you think that's because when you used to try therapy, I have a theory, because I didn't go to therapy as a kid, because when I was younger, I never really expressed an interest with it, and I didn't really start to suffer mental problems until I went through relationships. You know, they say that if you want to get fit in the gym, the best way to do it is to find a woman who loves you and then wait for her to break your heart. And then you're ready to go to the gym every day, right? I had to wait for that to happen for me to actually have mental problems and need help. But in reflecting, I feel that if you were to go to therapy as an adult, when you have total control over your own finances and your own work and what you do every day, and large control over your own mind and how you think, and you can change the time you wake up and your routine and the food you eat, like you have total control over everything. But as a kid, because I had a lot of friends who had crazy ADD and their parents would send them to therapy and counseling and shit because they were acting like little fucks in school. And like they would come out of it and they would be like, dude, the counselor was just trying to gaslight me into calming down, but I'm a spaz. I'm something special. I'm something different, right? Because as a kid, you don't have control over anything. Yeah. Like all you have control over is, do I say funny shit in class? And I was the kid who tried to say funny shit in class. I probably came off as annoying, right? But as a kid, counselors, it feels like you're being attacked from counselors because they're trying to get you to change, because you know why you're there. You're there because your parents put you there because you're acting up and they're going to try and change you, but I want to be my own person. But as an adult, it's kind of like, you know, checking yourself into rehab and saying like, hey dude, I can't stop snorting coke off of hookers' asses. Please help. Like I want to get better. And they'll go, oh, well, you know, how much sleep are you getting? And you're like, I don't sleep. I just do coke. And they're like, okay, maybe like set an alarm to remind you to go to bed and then take a melatonin. And you're like, I can do that. I'm an adult. But as a kid, you can't do those things because you don't have control over your life. And you're there because someone put you there. So I think that therapy on the whole, and this is to the whole audience, like if you're a kid and you're struggling, obviously seek help, because therapy does work for kids sometimes. But I don't think therapy works if someone puts you there. And the only reason kids go to therapy is if someone puts them there. But as an adult, when you have, input into your own life and you check yourself in, like you're there because you're seeking success and you have control over whether or not it works. And even if it doesn't work, like we talked about last night, it doesn't mean you're bad at it. You just haven't done it enough times. Go to a different therapist, try a different method, do more, try more. Don't stop trying those doors.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just interesting because in this conversation, I realized that like, at least that's the one noticeable aspect of my life that I refuse to try all the doors with my best effort.
Right. And that's not who you are.
And there are some doors that I try with my best effort, in that realm, right? But like the ones that could really potentially help me, like I just don't go after them in the same way that I go after other doors in other aspects of my life.
It's the difference between working hard and working smart, right? Like if you try a door handle and it doesn't turn, and so you like fucking put your whole body weight on it, and then you get a crowbar and you're working really hard, and then you're like, fuck it, this door won't open. I'll try the next one, right? And you try it, from the first turn that it's locked. And that putting your whole body weight on it and trying with the crowbar isn't going to work because it's locked and it just didn't work on the last door, right? So you're working hard in that you get the crowbar back out again, but you're not working smart in that that the door is locked. It only takes this much effort to open a door that's unlocked. It's just a matter of finding the right door.
Yeah.
So there's nothing against working hard. You're putting your best effort into it. It's just not the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
So you just have to find that path.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. This was insightful for me.
Yeah. To end this segment of the podcast, because we've got another topic to talk about, I want to leave this topic of grinding and pushing through and spoon theory on a positive note, because I feel like it's polarizing. Some people might feel called out. I would say that if you do feel called out, you only ever have emotional responses if there's some truth to what the person is saying. And it's up to you to determine whether or not that person says it with malice. So if you think that I'm attacking you, I guess I'm attacking you. And if you think I'm trying to help, I'm trying to help. And if you think I'm not even talking to you, cool. But I want to end on a positive note because not everyone is going to take it as an attack. So this is another Hormozy quote. Contrary to popular sentiment, there are a ton of young, hungry guys that work their asses off, don't complain, and are all ears, no talk. They're just not on social media all day. And despite the fact that we're saying this on our podcast, which is a social media platform, I think we are examples of those guys. Because I don't...
I'm so sorry. Could you repeat that? I was having a thought that like...
What's your thought?
Yeah. I'll tell you after the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. It was a good thought, but I was having a thought and I didn't want to lose the thought. And
I got you. All right, did you take a note to remember?
Oh, it's in my brain. It's not going to.
Okay. Contrary to popular sentiment, there are a ton of young, hungry guys that work their asses off, don't complain, and are all ears, no talk. They're just not on social media all day. And despite the fact that this is a podcast that we're putting on our social media, I think we are shining examples of those individuals. We work 18-hour fucking days. We work a full 9 to 5 and are building a business in our spare time. I say spare time, I mean every other waking hour, right? And we're taking on a podcast past that, not because we want to blow up the podcast and care about the views or want sponsors or anything like that, but because we see successful people looking back on their lives, wishing they had recorded more of their upbringing. And that's what we're trying to do. So we're doing our older selves a favor, and by proxy, maybe a favor to other people. Like the podcast I filmed today is not for somebody watching today. It's for somebody watching in 10 years when we're more successful and they go, man, how did these guys become successful? They go back and watch this video. So let's see, we're 23 years old right now. It's 2024. In 2033, I want someone who's 23 years old to watch this video. You were born in 2010. I'm talking to you. This is where we were when we were your age, and this is how we were thinking. And if you think similarly, you'll know what that path looks like because it's 2033 and we're still releasing podcasts. You know where this gets you. We don't right now, but we have faith. And that is what I want to circle back to the beginning on, because I think that the fundamental difference between people who are going to push through the swamp and the people who won't is whether or not they have faith in themselves to get there. And I learned a huge lesson about faith after that really bad breakup that I went through, because I was looking for, in part of my I'm not going to therapy growth, I went to church with a friend because I was like, I'm not a religious person. I don't buy into a lot of it, but that doesn't change the fact that the reason people go to church is because they listen to these stories, and each story has value in it. Like, it has a lesson or a moral. And I can take that lesson or moral and apply it to myself. I think that's why a lot of people like religion.
Yeah.
And I wanted to try it out. And so in going, I took the values and the morals from the stories, but what I really walked away from was, the story was about the blood and body of Christ. It was that story, right? And it was, I can't remember what it was exactly, but it was something along the lines of like, this bread is not actually the body of Christ, but it's a representation for it. And in eating this bread, you are showing your belief in him. And that's not something that you can control. You either feel it or you don't. And I realized to myself, oh, faith is equivalent to love, because you can't control who you love. You either love them or you don't. You feel it or you don't. And I was having a really difficult time getting over my recent ex at that time. And I had a weight lift off my shoulders when I realized I can't stop loving this person because I don't have control over that. Similar to how people who believe in God don't have control over that. It's their faith. And I think that I feel a similar pull when it comes to business, because I have faith that we're going to get there. It's like an undeniable, indisputable will to get there. It's an inevitable. Like, we will get there no matter what. I love this person no matter what. I believe in my God no matter what. Those three things I feel are very similar. And if you don't have that deep down, if you don't have that faith, I think you spend your time counting spoons, which is fine for those people.
Yeah.
They don't have that faith. But if you do have that faith and you do have those ideas, start applying these techniques.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Great.
And I think that we can dive into the next segment
Awesome.
of our podcast.
Yep.
So lead us away.
So last week we touched on body language, or maybe the last 2 weeks. I can't remember. Because an integral part of everything, your relationships, sales, business, everything, is body language. Can you effectively convey through your body positioning the intent that you mean? And it's tough to do this with words. I find that even when you're an intelligent wordsmith, you still have to use the right inflection. Similarly with body language, if I'm expressing, confidence, but I'm saying it with my shoulders hunched over and my hands are together like this, and I'm trying to convey confidence, and I'm kind of looking at you like this is not a confident posture, right?
Or the runner stance.
Or the what? The runner stance. Yeah, exactly. If you face your body towards the door because you want to leave. I have a fuck ton of stuff to share, but before I share all of my stuff, I send you the podcast that I listen to. Is the Vanessa Van Edwards and Julian House, his name.
Yeah, Vanessa Van Edwards.
Yeah, Chadwick. So Vanessa Van Edwards, and you were going to listen to it and then draw comparisons to the body language stuff that you had been focusing on the week before, and take on new notes. So I first want to hear what you found.
Yeah, so I did listen to it. I loved the podcast. I thought it was really good. It's actually, I listened to it twice, and the second time around, I think I enjoyed it more. Although I got through it the first time too, but the second time around, re-listening, I really enjoyed it. It's funny because I actually found her voice and her tonality in the first 30 minutes super fucking annoying.
I hate it.
Super annoying. And that was really funny because she's like the person giving advice about your tone and how you carry yourself.
Right.
And it was just excruciating the first 30 minutes.
I think she's too enthusiastic.
She was very enthusiastic, and I think she was also trying to put a lot of emphasis on her techniques and overworking them in the first 30 minutes. But after those first 30 minutes, for the last hour, she loosens up a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's much easier to listen to. It sounds much better.
It feels like she's not performing as much in the second half.
Exactly.
Right.
And so I really enjoyed listening to the podcast. And the second time over, I was aware of the fact that I was going to be irritated for the first 30 minutes. So I already knew that I was going to be, I already in my mind painted it to be annoying. So it actually was less annoying the second time around.
I think that's one of the reasons I really like Alex Hormozi, because, dude, going back to the gurus online, do you know Chris Crone?
I've heard his name, but I don't know.
He's a big real estate guy. Or Grant Cardone. You know Grant.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Grant Cardone is like, he's really aggressive and he's really loud. And everything that he says is super confirmative.
You got a 10x it, man. Just 10x it.
You got a 10x your business. You just got to put your money in and get your nose to the grindstone and just get going. And Vanessa Van Edwards uses the same enthusiasm. She moves a lot and she's excited and she wants to share these things with you. And she's using her techniques. And what I like about Alex from, like, I've always had this feeling when someone's excited about a movie and they're telling me about it, I wish them harm and I don't want to see the movie. It's like, you're at a 10, you're excited, and that puts me in a bad mood because I need a neutral environment and I don't want you to be excited anymore. So like, I remember
I get that.
In high school, my friend had just gotten his first girlfriend and we were good friends and our girlfriends were good friends. And he had just started dating her and this was like his first serious relationship. And he was having so much fun and he was loving it. And that's fine, but keep it to yourself. So he started coming to me and he was like, oh, dude, yeah, like we were making out last night. And I was like, I don't want to hear this. And he was like, we were in my dad's Jeep because I stole it. And I was like, you're not cool. And he was like, I think we're going to hook up next week. And I was like, would you shut the fuck up? It drove me nuts. And it got to the point that he started saying like, I mean, you know, our relationship is kind of better than yours. And I was like, I don't like that. I don't like what's happening here. So I broke them up. And I played chess and I broke them up because it was pissing me off. I don't like extremes of anything, really. Again, why I'm not super political. Mm-hmm. And I think that one of the reasons I like Hormozy is because he's so neutral. He doesn't get upset in many videos and he doesn't get super excited in many videos. He's just like net neutral, which is my safe space.
Yeah.
Where I'm comfortable. Yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. A couple of the things that I learned from the podcast that I kind of wanted to touch on was that smiling is contagious. I think that's something I mentioned last week is I try to, like, in most times, I try to smile through things or to smile to make myself feel better. It's important.
It works.
Real smiles reach the cheeks.
Yep.
So when you fake smile, it's like, yeah, I get to see you. You know, it doesn't really convey in the same way because when people are looking for a smile, they're not actually looking at the structure of your mouth. They're looking at how your eyes, you know, change with your cheek muscles.
Yep.
So I thought that was really interesting.
When I focus on that, it's changed how I smile. For one, when I smile, one of my eyes closes more than the other.
I do that. I think I do that too.
Do you see my left eye?
I do that too.
It's weird. I try to fix it, but I end up looking fucking insane.
Yeah.
But now when I smile, I focus on trying to give myself crow's feet. That's what I think about when I smile. And I find that it makes it seem a lot more genuine.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, I thought that point was really cool. Mm-hmm. Additionally, she talked about being charismatic. And this is something that I think I sort of touched on last week, but maybe not.
Who cares? Let's touch on it now.
Yeah. A mixture of warmth and competence. And I was listening to the podcast and thinking about how I communicate. And I know I have competence in many fields, but I think that I put a huge emphasis on giving off the warmth. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I think that in my language and how I convey myself, there are times when I solely focus on being warm and kind, right? And like, you know, conveying my message in a warm and comfortable way to like people I don't know or stuff like that, right?
Right.
And it's not like I'm trying to change who I am to you know, make them feel comfortable. I'm just using words that show I am a safe person to communicate with.
Yep.
Right? So different things. I know in the past I've talked about how I like don't change myself to communicate with other people. That's still true. I just use warm words and have warm word choices in order to help them feel more comfortable, even though my opinions and my words are still my opinions and my words. I'm not changing those.
That's something that I focused on recently and something that you and I talked about last night because I recognize that I'm going to have the opinions that I have, and generally speaking, I present them in the way that makes logistical sense to me. But that is not always the right language to speak. So there's actually two examples. The meeting that we had yesterday morning, we were trying to figure out how do we convey the message that we want to convey and get the information that we want in the way that best fits the person we're talking to.
Right.
And then last night, I wanted to understand how can I communicate with you more effectively and not sound like a dick? because I don't mean to be a dick.
Sure.
My opinions aren't going to change, but the delivery is hugely important, which is why we're putting such an emphasis on body language right now, because I mean, you know me, I'm blunt. Like, we went through college together. I was very blunt to the professors.
Yeah.
And I feel like many of them didn't appreciate it, but I don't give a fuck. But I give a fuck about you and the people who I talk about and talk to, generally speaking, right?
Right. You know, this podcast is a lot about documenting our growth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's valuable to bring up how we are growing.
Right.
I thought, so looking at the warmth and confidence thing, it was really interesting to like look through my text messages or I think about how I talk and see that I choose so many warm words or I express myself, at least I try to express myself warmly in a majority of cases. And I don't really convey a sense of competence, which I think I could work on. I could try to weave in sounding like I know what I'm talking about and not being like super cuddly and warm with all my word choices all the time.
Interesting. I think you actually strike a good balance between them.
Okay.
I think that
was I laughed at myself because I was like, okay, which is like not a warm word choice at all.
I think so. It's an agreement.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think the reason I think that is because when you're speaking to somebody about a topic that you bring up, it's very informative. And it's like, here's what I learned and here's what I think. And that's competence, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll break and be like, what do you think? And that's warmth. And that's a good balance between the two. When somebody brings you something, it's either all warmth, like, okay, yeah, you drove for the Ferrari dealer. Okay.
Oh my fucking God.
That's later on in my thing. I'll get to it. You pat him on the head and you're like, sounds good. And it's very warm, right? Or, and I think this has changed in recent weeks, but let's take, for example, like pretend 6 months ago, right?
Sure.
Someone would say something that you disagree with, right? And the warmth is sucked out of the room like a vacuum. And you're like, I don't think that's correct. And they're like, what? And then you're like, mm-mm. And then you'll tell them why. So it's kind of like an all one or the other. And integrating them, I think, is actually something that you've been working on recently in our how do you disagree with somebody but not be a dick to them, right? Like, okay, I understand. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great way of doing it. So I think that without putting a label on it like we're doing now, you've been integrating that lately.
It's interesting you bring that up. I had an excellent conversation with Alinka about 2 months ago.
Alanka?
Oh, Alaska. I had a great conversation with her about 2 months ago. Is that what I said? Something like that. I don't know. Anyways, it was about, it was in regards to should the rich be like taxed higher,
right?
And blah, blah, blah. Stuff like that. And we had disagreeing opinions about it, but I was able to convey myself. I was really proud of how I dealt with myself in that conversation because I was able to convey my thoughts and how I felt truly and not frame it around what I thought I should say because I'm talking to this person.
Right.
But I was able to convey it in a way that was warm yet competent.
Right.
And that is like an example that sticks in my mind. I was like, I did a good job that time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I want to share one more example, if you don't.
Sure.
This is a funny story.
I've got one too. I think you'll hit it.
Okay.
Do yours first.
I was at the paper store on Friday. I went to, I had to pick up like some wrapping paper, and I was just like not in a really great. I was just in a neutral mood that day, but I was feeling like a little bit snappy, just a little bit. I went into the paper store, got my stuff, a couple wrapping things, whatever. I got up to the counter, and I put the stuff down. And she starts scanning the items, and she's like, "Oh, are you going to be paying with cash or card today?" I'm like, "Oh, I have card." And she was like, "Oh, no worries." And then she was like, "Oh, do you want to sign up for rewards here at the paper store?" And I was like, "Oh, no, thank you." And she was like, "Oh, no worries." And then she was like, "Do you want to round up to donate to the starving children in Africa?" And I was like, "Oh, like no thanks,
no worries."
And she was like, "No worries." Dead ass. And then she was like, and then she started pulling a bag out to put the stuff in. I had like two things. I was like, "Oh, don't worry about it. I don't need a bag." And she said, "Oh yeah, no worries." And I turned to her and I said, "I'm not worried about it. Don't worry."
Dude, that's fucking great.
It turned out I'm not worried about that.
That's fantastic.
And like she was kind of like off put, and I could tell she like laughed a little bit, but like also felt a little bit self-conscious. And like as soon as it came out of my mouth, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean that to come across rude. You are a wonderful person, and I hope that you have a beautiful day. You've been a pleasure. I'm sorry I didn't mean to make you feel that way, because I could tell she was like real socially awkward for a second. I was like,
so funny.
I hope you have a wonderful day. You're an amazing person. Thank you so much. And
That's
I grabbed
good.
my stuff and I left.
But
like in that moment, I was like, that was like a moment of like just competence and no warmth for me. Like, that one little sentence. I was like, don't worry, I'm not worried about it.
That's hilarious. But it's so funny after listening to that podcast that every interaction you immediately start gauging the scale on warmth to competence, right?
Yeah.
So in talking about disagreements or problem solving, I'll share an advanced technique with you, and I'll warn you, I've used this on you, right? And I want to make a clarification because I love and care about you. And I love and care about many people who I use body language or social tactics with, not against. The clarification, like breaking up my friend and his girlfriend, right? Great example of manipulation. That I would not do that again. I've grown since then. I was a shitty high schooler. But manipulation is using social tactics for malicious intent for your own personal gain. That's manipulation. I don't know what to call what I do, but I'm going to give you an example of it that I used on you last night. When you're speaking with someone and you disagree with something or you have an idea, but they need to be on board with it, the best way to do it is to have them come up with the idea.
Yeah.
And the best way I have found to do that is to ask leading questions from a position of competence. So, for example, we spoke about therapy last night, right? And instead of sitting down and being like, dude, I think you should go to therapy. I think it would really help you. That doesn't do fucking anything. That's not helpful at all. That's blunt and the way that I tend to operate, but that's not effective. Similarly, when talking to someone about whether you think the rich should be taxed, you can sit down and be like, dude, the rich are the same as us. They just have more income. Why would we tax them any different? That's a very blunt way to do it. A more roundabout way, but a way that I think people come around more, is if you ask leading questions that gets them to recognize that a different way of thinking might be better. So in the rich scenario, you could say, oh, well, what makes rich people different from us? And then like, why do you think that their income is better than ours? So last night they were leading questions like, why do you struggle with XYZ? Or why do you feel like you need to be tough? Or why do you feel like pushing isn't that this or that? And then we used racing analogies because I find that if I relate anything to racing, you connect with it very strongly. And
that's my strong suit for connection.
Right. And I really love that method because it's not telling someone bluntly, it's not aggressive. And if you ask those leading questions, like if I were to talk to someone about the rich thing and ultimately they just express different views and don't like it, that's a way for me to tell in my head, okay, they are not on board with this. They do not want this and I shouldn't push for it because they're not receptive of it. But if they answer those questions and start to change their perspective and start to come around, then you've successfully opened their eyes to a different path. And I think that that's beautiful because you let them walk down the path that they want to.
I'm glad you brought this up because that is one of the things I did in my conversation with Alinka. Was like, when we'd have a disagreement, I wouldn't tell her my opinion.
Right.
But I would ask her a question that would make her think about her opinion.
Right.
And I would be like, well, yes, I don't know. Yes, the rich have tax benefits that they can go through, but why do you think they have the opportunity to make that much money?
Right.
And she's like, oh, well, like, because they worked really hard. And I'm like, right. So they worked harder than 99.99% of the people, and they have more money than 99.9% of the people.
Right.
So, like, do you think that you are in a position to say whether they deserve that or don't deserve that when neither of us have accomplished what they've accomplished? Right. So, like, you kind of frame the question in such a way that's like, hold on, what is my opinion and why do I hold it?
Right.
those were on the fly examples. I can't remember exactly what I said in this conversation, but I think they were decent.
Yeah. I think fundamentally the reason that structure works is because you're not looking to find an opinion. You're looking to find what makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you're discussing what makes sense and why. And as a result, what is the logical outcome? So with therapy, we spoke about it earlier on the podcast. I won't repeat myself, but when you talk through the reason why to not do it and the reasons for it, you ultimately figure out well, this is just an option that I haven't tried yet, but maybe it'll work. And it doesn't serve myself to say that it won't work. So maybe I'll try it. Logical outcome, right? The reason I love this approach is because let's say we had the same conversation with Alinka, except it was in reversal. So she believed that the rich shouldn't be taxed more than the poor, and I believe that they should. In discussing it, when I'm asking her questions about why, I'll just start to recognize that what she's saying makes sense. And then when she asks me, I'll recognize that my explanation doesn't make sense. So we come out to the most logical outcome. And sometimes you're proven wrong. And the best reason for using this strategy is if I come to you with a different perspective and I start to ask you questions about why you believe what you believe, and you actually make sense, and I poke holes in my own reasoning, I can change my mind. It's a really great way to either open someone's eyes to a new idea without being confrontational, or gaining insight in someone else's perspective and changing your own position on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
What else do you have?
So going off of this competence and warmth thing, you need to let others know that they feel heard while also making it clear that you know what you're talking about.
Right.
And that's kind of finding that balance. And I Vanessa Van Edwards put it really well in her podcast. Definitely go listen to it. It's an amazing podcast. But
I think we can link it in the description. Maybe we'll do that.
Yeah, we can link it in the description.
Yeah.
But a lot of people use warm words, and that's something that she talks about in her podcast. Emojis count as a warm word, or exclamation points, or stuff like that count as a lot of warm words.
Right.
And then they write emails that use all these warm words, but then people wonder why people don't take them seriously. And it's, because you're not using any competent words.
Right.
You're just giving off warmth, which is I guess easier to dodge, or easier to kind of not take seriously.
Right.
Right.
Because they're a nice guy. They'll be understanding if you don't listen to them.
Right. Right. And so I thought that was it's something that made sense to me, but I'd never put it together and written it out, or heard someone else say it.
Right.
So I gained some value in that. And I just said this, but I have it written down. I feel like I use a lot of warm words with certain people.
Yeah.
So that's something that I want to be conscientious of going forward.
You want to use it tactically.
Yes.
Right. So for our meeting yesterday, using warm words is really important to get someone to like you, and using competent words is really important to get someone to trust you, right? And I feel that our actions speak very loud in competence. And so people, one of the bartenders assumed we were in our 30s the other week because of the way we conduct ourselves, right? So if our actions shout competence and our words convey warmth, then people will inherently trust us because they know we're capable of quality work and we're not dicks. So for our meeting yesterday, we have been taking a really warm route of here's what we have done, here's what we have to share, like us, please trust our work. It's a good balance between warmth and competence. And I think that we have conveyed our competence enough now that we don't really need the warmth as much anymore, and we can be more direct, which is why yesterday's meeting, I shuffled the agenda around a little bit. And I was I think I want to ask questions of this person instead of giving. I think it's time that we need to get a little back. And I think that we have earned that because of the amount of warmth that we've put out there. Does that make sense?
Could you repeat the last part one more time? I don't think I grabbed it.
Yeah, we've been giving a lot of warmth to get the person to like us and to trust us. And now that they have seen that from us, now we can start to get to the competent side and be okay, now we need a little bit back from you.
Yes, I agree. I think that's great. And I think that works really well for people that you have a long-term opportunity to talk with.
Right.
Right. What I think I want to work on, and I've have examples that I've done well, like the Alinka conversation, but I don't always do, is I want to condense the window between warmth and competence to what I have now from 2 months right? Down to a 20-minute conversation.
Yeah.
How do I get this 2-month opportunity for someone to look at me to see that I'm warm and competent down to a 20-minute segment that I can have with an individual person that I don't know at the start of the conversation?
Right.
Right. And that's what I'm working on.
And that's so tough to do without bragging.
Yes.
It's very difficult.
I think it has a lot to do with like incorporating subtleties that show greater competence while also delivering them in a manner that is formal yet warm.
Yeah.
That is my at least initial interpretation of how to do that.
There's also a huge technique that goes unappreciated a lot of the time, but that we have a very competitive advantage in, given that we're in a single community most of the time, which is your reputation. So if other people speak on your behalf, that dude's always working. He's always sitting on his laptop. He's always crunching numbers. He's got a crazy work ethic. He knows his shit, right? People who are in the space will walk up to you knowing your reputation of being a hard worker already, which illustrates competence.
Yeah. 100%.
It's a huge benefit that we have.
I want to dive into a couple of the physical things that Vanessa Van Edwards mentioned in the podcast, and some stuff I mentioned last week and some stuff that I didn't. But she talked about open hands and the difference between like I am receiving, which is palms up, versus I am like stating. Right. You know, I'm stating, which is palms down. Right. So that's really interesting. And I did this before I listened to the podcast, but I have a tendency to cross my arms and I don't like how that makes me look. Like it doesn't make me look open. So I put my hands down like this. And before the podcast, I was doing it. But now after listening to the podcast and her mentioning literally the exact same thing, it's made me extra conscientious of like when I start to cross, so I'll like get halfway through crossing and then I'll like put my hands down. Like right. And she has a couple interesting tips. Like if you're holding a pencil, it can be, harder to cross because you have something in your hand. So it's like, what the fuck, right? So holding something in your hand will actually lend you to having your hands out, which is a more open position to be in physically. Yeah. Ending your sentences on a down note. Either having a neutral tone is good. Having a high tone, well, I guess I ended on a down note there, but having a high tone would be almost questioning, right? And then ending on a down note is more of a state. Right. So she talks about those differences, and I know that's something that we mentioned too, and you actually mentioned it to me a while back when we were doing short recordings for direct-to-camera content.
You're going to fucking hate editing those. Like going back, you're going to hate it. Now that you know that, now that you listen, you'll go back and listen and be like, God damn it.
Yeah.
Not that you sound bad, but like now that you're conscious of it, you're going to go back.
Now that I've grown, looking at footage from 3 months ago, I was like, what the fuck?
Right. Life and wife, dude. Yeah.
But I thought that was a really great note and valuable to hear again. Yeah. And do you have something to add in terms of the physical things that she mentioned that you have started to incorporate or things that you learned from the podcast? Because my next bit talks about the types of words.
I have a fuckload, so I want you to finish your bit before I steamroll.
Cool. The other thing that I took away from the podcast is using words that are winning associated or winner associated is really great for productivity, perseverance, and actually accomplishing more and actually doing better. Yep. She used this example of, for a sales rep position job, they tried an experiment where half the people got a standard script for sales, and the other half the people got the exact same script with a picture of someone winning a trophy at the top. Yeah. And the people who had the picture with the winner on the top did significantly better in terms of closing and sales. They did better on their calls. They did better with the script. They worked longer hours. They worked harder. Right. And that's incredible. Just to have a picture around that's associated with someone winning has a winner effect on you. Yep. I thought was super cool. She also talked about using words that, like in your language, that are kind of winner words. So win, achieve, master, greatness. Like using those words in your using those words in your sentences helps the reader to feel like they can win it, whatever you're trying to convey.
Right.
And it also helps you to use those words because you start to feel like a winner too.
Right.
Right. And they did this experiment with, I think it was a math test, and they had 2 tests. It was the same exact content on the tests, but one group of kids or people got the standard directions for the math test, which was like, answer the following questions. Please circle your answer when you are done and turn it in at the front. Right. And then the other test had the exact same, like, actual questions on the test, but at the top it said, win the best answer and achieve a great result by going through each one of the questions. Please master this test to the best of your ability and turn it in at the front when you're done.
Yeah.
Right. And the people who got that second test with the winner associated directions at the top did significantly better, worked harder, and showed higher scores than the people who just got the standard test.
Yeah.
And that's another example of how just winner vocabulary can have a really dramatic effect on your output and how you do.
I think it's because each one of those words has a significant, a potent level of both warmth and confidence. Because it's saying, I think you can do great things, which is saying you can do great things, which is competence, and I think you can, which is warmth. I think the reason those words work really well is because they're charismatic words in their entirety.
I thought you were actually going to go in a different direction. I agree with you there. The direction I thought you were going to go with is when I say a word like winner or achievement, right? Inside of the sentence, using that kind of language, it's not only that I'm putting myself in the language that I'm presenting, but the person I'm talking to can feel associated to it. So then they also feel like a winner or someone that's achieving or doing great things. Right. So it gives off a sense of warmth. Additionally, because the other person feels as though they are complimented by your words.
Right.
Or, does that make sense?
Well, it's like a vote of confidence.
Yes.
Right. It's a vote of trust.
Exactly. And I think that can be inherently warm in ways, right? Or a warm, competent balance.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that I always took notes on while I was listening to you, I'm sure there's other stuff as you bring up the topics that I'll recall and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's important to spark dopamine in the people that you're talking to because it engages them. And she used this example with Shark Tank, with people who gave the sharks props or walked over to greet them or showed them something unique or had other displays in their presentation that engaged the sharks that were, trying to figure out if they want to invest or not. And it sparked dopamine for them. So they were inherently more tuned in to the presenter.
Right.
And so that's what I had from the podcast, at least that I wrote down. I'm sure there's more. I look forward to seeing what you have.
I have a metric fuck ton to get through, so I'm going to burn down this list. We can stop with the ones that you think are interesting, but these don't come from any specific source. I got a couple from Reddit. I got a couple from a podcast that I listened to about body language from the human lie detector from the CIA. I'm sure they have a bunch of them, but some lady uses a human lie detector. The first one is one that I use pretty frequently that I notice a lot of people don't, including the person who we had a meeting with yesterday morning. When you're late for something, if you say, I'm so sorry for being late, everybody in the room automatically thinks he did something wrong and he feels bad about it. He is not in a position of power. We don't like him. But if you walk in and you say, thank you everyone for your patience, you're conveying that you haven't done anything wrong and that you're actually grateful for them. And then they think more highly of you and themselves because they're doing the due diligence of giving you their patience and you respect them for it. So instead of apologizing for things, just in general, there are some people, I can't think of any off the top of my head, who apologize profusely for things. But if you replace I'm sorry with thank you, it really transforms who you are as a person and how you interact with people. Yeah. That's a great one.
You mentioned that a little while ago.
Yeah.
And that's something that I've used, not every time, because sometimes I am sorry.
Right.
But I used to never use it, so I've started using it.
Yeah. If you're really genuinely sorry, like you fucked up and you're apologizing, that should be a sincere apology. But if it's, like, oh, there was traffic, I didn't expect it, or something out of my control, it's like, thanks for understanding. The next one I have is the distance between your shoulders and your ears. This is a huge conveyor of competence.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I forgot. Thank you for bringing that point up. That was a good one, too.
So, for our audio listeners, I'm hunching my shoulders up like this. If I'm conveying a point to you like this and I hunch my shoulders up like this, right, I don't sound as confident, even if I'm using my confident voice, but I have my shoulders hunched up like this. You'll notice a lot of academics and a lot of engineers will hunch their shoulders like this. And that's because it's a defensive position. You're trying to hide. You're trying to become a smaller target. So you're hunching your shoulders up, right? If you imagine that there's a winch between your earlobe and your shoulder, you want to press those as far apart as possible. Because if you sit comfortably like this, now audio listeners, my shoulders are pushed back. I'm sitting up more proud. And I give you the same information with my shoulders back. I'm making eye contact and I have my chin up, my chest out. It's a much, much more confident look. So just constantly be thinking when you're speaking to someone where your wall meets the ceiling is a confident feeling. Yeah. And by proxy, the difference between your shoulders and your earlobes makes a big difference.
I actually use that wall meets the ceiling as a confident feeling thing. Yeah. I use that chest thing, walking the subway the other day.
It works, right?
I was walking by a group of people and I was like, I'm going to try to broaden my neck out a little bit and walk straight up instead of fucking hunched over like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And it actually felt better. And it felt more confident. It was a confident walk, man.
Yeah. This stuff works.
Yeah.
And by proxy, the wall meets the ceiling. When you do that, you can feel your shoulders move back. And then by conjunction, your ears move further away from your shoulders. So they work hand in hand.
Yeah.
Two ways of saying the same thing, really. My next one is on Barack Obama's cadence. Last week, we discussed taking pauses strategically in your sentences to keep people engaged. And Barack Obama's cadence, everybody knows what I'm talking right now. Everyone knows what I'm talking about right now if you've heard Obama speak, right? He's got a very unique dialect. The reason that he does that is because he wants people to hang on every word, but he picks his pauses strategically so that you continue to listen to him. He doesn't give you the opportunity to interject because he always stops right before he's supposed to say the juicy bit, and you're waiting for him to get his point across. So next time, I think Vanessa Van Edwards speaks about that. I know she talks about his thumb. He does the finger clicker thing.
Yeah, with the pinch thumb. Like this, I think.
Oh, it's like this, I think. Pinched thumb. This. Oh. When he makes a point, it's like this.
I thought it was like this. I guess this is only the little...
Send is doing the sign language symbol for I have to take a piss. But Barack Obama, it's almost like the Italian thing, like this, where he's pinching his thumb like this, but I don't actually know. I'm not sure.
We can look it up.
Yeah. Anyways, that's the Obama kittens. We've had a recent terrible experience with somebody at the bar who butted into a conversation in the middle of a sentence and wouldn't shut up for 15 fucking minutes. I actually exited the sentence after his second interruption of me and put my earbuds in, and I abandoned you. Sorry.
After you dipped, I maybe said a couple things, and then I just was quiet.
Right.
And it was miraculous how some people just continue to come up with shit to say.
Right. And he didn't pick up on any of the body language stuff that we've been talking about.
I tried everything. I tried turning away. I tried being quiet. I tried not making eye contact. I tried fast nodding. I just fucking tried all of this fucking shit. And it did not fucking work.
Yep. Some people are just oblivious. But I've found an escape. When you're in a conversation and someone won't shut the hell up and you need to get control back of the conversation to exit, because once you start talking, you can say, thanks for chatting, I have to get back to work, or I'm sorry, I have to go. But if they won't shut up, you don't have the opportunity to talk. Next time that happens, just start fidgeting with something, fumble with it, and drop it. And then when you stoop down to pick it up, they'll take a break because you're not listening because you're on the ground, right? And then when you stand back up, come back up speaking. And while you're speaking, take control of the conversation back again, wrap it up, then go back to your shit.
That's a good one.
I call it drop your keys. So that's a great one that I will be using next time if I'm not as blunt as I was and just putting your earbud back in because I'm a dick. But that's a great one. The next one I have is on de-escalation. You and I have the angry boat theory, which is only one person can be in the angry boat. So if a customer is upset, get even more upset for them on their behalf. But in addition to that, you don't want to just be upset and stay upset. Eventually, you want to get the conversation back to a neutral state, right? And I actually watched an owner of one of the businesses that we're familiar with do this with an upset customer the other week, but I didn't recognize it until now. It's de-escalation. When someone's upset, you can get upset with them, and this is how the conversation should kind of flow. You make I can't believe it. That's outrageous. I understand why you're angry. I'm going to fix it for you. We're going to get this worked out. You have a right to be frustrated. This is super inconvenient. We're going to work this out. It's going to be okay. I would be annoyed too. Right.
Yeah.
So I just went from
sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
It's not just, I would be annoyed too. It's I'm more annoyed than you are on your behalf, because this is so frustrating for us. And I cannot believe that someone else in my business put you through this.
Right. The point here is that you're talking down, you're de-escalating verbally with your words. So I use the word angry and then frustrated and then annoying. So subliminally, I'm taking it from, I'm angrier than you, this is a huge deal, to we're going to fix it, it's going to be all right, to, yeah, this is just a blip in your day, we're going to move on, it's going to be okay. All the while, you're still expressing intent that, it's unacceptable and you're going to make it right. But if you remain flabbergasted and upset the entire time, it's going to remain a big deal. And so you can kind of talk it down to angry, frustrated, annoyed, and kind of like de-escalate that way. A great example of this that's worked out in the real world, there was this mafia boss in the 80s in New York, and he was known as being a smooth talker, but a firm man. And he pissed a lot of people off. And so when mafia members would get fucking livid, like upset with him, like, you fucking stole my cocaine, or you fucked my wife, or you killed my brother, they would come to his office to give him a piece of their mind. And when they got there, they had to sit in the waiting room before they could speak with him. So they get in, and the receptionist is like, oh, please have a seat. Like, Mr. Man will see you, just a few minutes. And he's like, this guy's going to make me wait. What the fuck? Fuck that guy. But while he's sitting in the waiting room, there's a water fountain that's trickling. He's got like Zen music playing. The receptionist is actually the mafia boss's wife, so she knows everything that's going on in the community. And so she'd come over and be like, hey, I'm actually baking, cookies or scones or something. Would you like one? I've got, please, I insist, you must try. And so the guy is essentially like cooled down in the waiting room. He's made to sit and relax for a little bit. And he's primed before going into the office with the mafia boss to be relaxed. So it's a nonverbal way of de-escalating before the conversation even starts. I thought that was an interesting example. These are all over the place, so interject if you have something. But my next one is a sales tactic. And there's a story here. I found this on Reddit. The concept of getting something for free completely derails a person's critical thinking skills. My dad was a tool distributor, and he drove a truck to various repair shops selling tools to mechanics. He got an idea to start selling candy bars on his truck for $1. But you would get a free candy bar with every tool purchase. Almost everyone who asked how much the candy bar was didn't want to pay $1 for one, but they would buy a $100 socket set in order to get the free candy bar. So it's almost like, I'm checking out your tools. I don't know. I want a candy bar. But if I'm kind of looking at everything already and it comes with the purchase, why not? Why not get something? It comes with a candy bar too. It's a perk, right? Even though you can buy the candy bar separately. Similarly, there was a store in Finland. It was like a furniture store or something, right? And if you went to their store opening, you got a free 5-gallon bucket. And this place was mobbed. A 5-gallon bucket, it's 80 cents at Home Depot. But it's a free bucket.
A good 5-gallon bucket.
Dude, everybody loves a good 5-gallon bucket. It's free. It's not expensive at all. It's 80 cents. The candy bar is $1, right? But you can get it for free if you come to our event. You can get it for free if you make a purchase, right? And the concept of free, even if it's a tiny thing, like less than $1, people are like, ooh, and then they're interested, right?
Yeah.
Someone made an interesting remark in the comments that was, a bucket represents more than just an item because it's an opportunity. There's so many different things you can do with the bucket. But honestly, it could have been a hat. Like we would have like crawled over dead bodies to get those free Rolex hats a few years ago because it's free, right? People love free shit or free with purchase shit. So that was an interesting one. And I think that there's actually a way that we can incorporate that into our own endeavors. But I made a note. The next one is people become what you tell them they are. So if in talking to somebody, disciplinary, whatever, if you say someone is a slacker, they'll slack. If you say someone is a hard worker, they'll work harder for you, even if this isn't true. A great example with the SAE team, I did not do this as clearly as I would have liked to. I was nice to people on our team who were slackers most of the time, but I would call them out when they did a terrible job. And in being nice to them, I would be like, like, hey man, like I know you're capable of good work, right? It's almost like I know if you try, you can get there. But if I rephrase that to, dude, you're a hard worker. I respect you. I love that you are engaged with the team. I know you're a good guy. I know you're going to do this for me. A great example is if someone owes you money and they haven't paid you back yet, instead of saying, hey, reminder, you owe me money, say, hey man, I'm not worried about it at all. I know you're good for it. I'm just reminding you about the $20, right? I know you're a trustworthy guy and you're going to get it to me. I'm just reminding you. And they'll find you the money right away because you're essentially complimenting them in an insult or complimenting them in asking them for something. And they'll succumb to that. An easy extension of this is avoiding phrases like don't do XYZ rather than you are or you should do XYZ. So in writing our employee training, I've rephrased a lot of the things from, because in training, a lot of it is what not to do, right? So it's like, don't be a dick to the customers. Don't steal money out of the drawer. Don't be pushy. Dishes. Right. Don't leave dirty dishes. Don't be pushy. But if you rephrase those things to try to maintain a clean workspace, or be sure to count the drawer after every shift, something like that, right? Yeah. That's more positively influenced.
I know that you're a responsible person, so don't forget to sweep behind the bar once you're done with your shift.
Exactly that. Or if somebody last night didn't sweep, say, hey man, you're a hard worker. I love what you do. I think you might have forgotten to sweep last night, but I'm not bothered by it because I know you're a good dude and you're going to do it next time, right? And that's a really great way to phrase. And people really respond to this. People actually follow through on these items.
Yeah.
My next one is if you're meeting someone new, it's difficult to converse with somebody without steamrolling or only asking questions. In a conversation with somebody, they will want to share themselves with you, but also want to hear about you. And you will want to share yourself with somebody or just hear what they have to say. It's a tough balance. So a technique that I use when meeting new people, if I'm engaged in conversation, is I'll ask them 2 questions and then I'll share something about myself. So 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I call it ask, share. And I use this because it's not a give and take, because I feel like with the give and take where I ask you a question and then I share something and now it's your turn to ask me a question, that can lead to dead ends or seem like you're egotistical. But if I'm asking more than I'm sharing, then that shows, hey, I care about what you have to say. I want to learn more. Oh, I can relate to it on this note. But you're giving me more information than I'm giving you. So it seems like I'm more invested in you without just being an interviewer. That's something else that I use. The next one I have is a final one. It's a sales tactic. And I don't know if I can think of specific examples of this in the bar, but I made note of it because I have noticed salespeople do it before. If you nod while asking a question, people are more likely to say yes. Example, when you're asking for a drink at the bar and the bartender asks 24 ounce while nodding, you're more likely to say yes than to tell them no, just to 12. The general public. So when someone's asking you blowjob, do you want chips with that? Right? And when they're nodding, or especially if they're nodding and they're already on their way to grab the drink, right? Mm-hmm. So many times I've asked a bartender, I'm like, oh, could I do my regular, the 12 ounce? They're like, sure. Or I'm like, can I get a tea? I leave the blank. And they're like, sure. And they go and they grab the 24 ounce and I see them holding the cup on their way to fill it up. But by that point, I'm like, they're already walking. Like, I'll just get a 24. Who cares? I'll get the 20. I'll get the 12 after, right? But it is rude to assume, and people could be like, I didn't ask for that. I want my loyalty, right? But if you say 24 and you're already holding the cup and on your way to the keg, I think it's a solid sale. It's a good call. So that concludes my body language update with everything.
Cool. I like all those tips. Those are great.
Sweet. Do you have anything else to add? I have a closer.
This is all, everything that I had, we've gone through.
Perfect. In that case, what I want to close on is a quote from Alex Hormozi. In this podcast, we talked about the grind. We talked about what the next 30 years are going to look like for us, why we're able to do these things that other people aren't, and that is rooted in faith. Mm-hmm. We have faith that we can do this. It's a deep-rooted belief. That's not something that can be bought. That's not something that can be taught. It's something that you have or you don't. And following that, we talked about the techniques that we're going to use to get there. The best way to get to where you want to go is to convey your true meaning, and how to effectively communicate with people and how that relates to sales. And so what I want to end on is something related to the woman in the red dress. And I feel like this is something that many people block out. People in our situation are very focused on how do I make money today, not how do I make so much money in the future. So Alex Hormozi and acquisition.com, their slogan is, we help you make your last dollar, not your first. And so many people are so worried about making their first dollar in the entrepreneurial space. Great example is real estate. So we were speaking the other day about when we start this business, is it possible to do a part-time job while we do this, or like have some source of income in case we need to refunnel money back into business in the first few months and not go broke and starve? And it's tough to do that with a 9-to-5 because you have to be in the office. But we were throwing around the idea. Grace got her real estate license. She can go through it and tell us how it's done. We could probably get going really quickly. It's a commission-based sales position, right? So real estate is a really great option for that. And real estate has the ability to make you, I mean, you can do like 6-figure months if you're good at it, right? So like, dude, that's like $1 million a year. That's a lot of money. From somebody sitting where we are, $1 million a year is a ton of money. But to me, it's a woman in the red dress because you work for every dollar. It's not a system. And what I want to reiterate is that if we do get a commission-based sales job to support us through the business, it's not because the commission-based sales job is the future, even if we develop a business around it, if it ends up going that direction, right? But it's not a distraction from the true meaning of our intent. The quote is, the majority of millionaires are made in real estate. The majority of billionaires are made in private equities. Real estate is the sure thing, but business is the big thing. And I want to achieve big things. So even if we use real estate as a method of getting there, I think that what you and I know that falls on many people who are stuck in the 3 to 5 million a year range is that business is the big thing.
You know, the first time we heard this concept was actually in 4 quadrants. You think about it. You have
yeah.
The E, employee.
Right.
S is self-employed. I is the investor, and B is the business person.
Yeah.
And the business person, on a superficial level, I remember reading that book and going, why is the business person, more like monetarily high position in this ranking?
Right.
And I always thought like, oh, like the investor, they invest. Right. And reading that book and going through so many other courses and other people talking about business like that, it's become really clear to me that investment is just a vehicle for business. Like business is the cream of the crop.
Right. Right. You need to have influence over it. Justin and I were talking about stocks the other day because the stock market is in the shitter and Justin lost some money. And I was like, at the end of the day, yeah. Well, at the end of the day, it's just legal gambling because you have no influence over it. And I would rather own the ladder than try to climb on it or bet on whether or not the guy climbing the ladder is going to fall off, right? Owning a business gives you total control over the business. And that's not a mitigation of risk if you don't know how to run a business, but it gives you the opportunity to decrease risk if you do know how to run a business. So the meaning behind this, Robert Kiyosaki was so helpful in getting me to transition from the 9-to-5 stage thinking to the business owner stage thinking or investor stage thinking. But what he lacks that I really need is break it down to an idiot level. I read at a 3rd grade level. Please say it in a way that I can understand. And Hormozi breaks it down to, here's what a business is. Here's what you need. Here's how you think. And here's what you do. And I would be so apprehensive to throw someone Alex Hormozi content with no prerequisite because it is so detail oriented. You already have a picture from Kiyosaki. I think that we stumbled into a fantastic transition into business by going from Kiyosaki to Hormozi. I think that's just so beautiful. And Kiyosaki is really great at igniting that fire that, hey, you can make more money. But he's not so specific in how to get there. And I feel like many people may have listened to Kiyosaki's content, stopped there, and then just gone, how much money can I make in real estate? And hadn't really thought critically or gotten the detail that Hormozi offers in how to scale a business to grow past that. Because a lot of what Kiyosaki talks about is wealth in real estate. And he talks about his oil companies and his gold companies and the value of hard assets and things. But he doesn't talk about, like, how do you build a real estate company? How do you build a gold company? How do you buy an oil company? Like, he doesn't talk about how. And Hormozi talks about how a lot. And particularly interesting, Hormozi talks about how, and he doesn't know shit about the stock market or real estate. He just knows business. Yeah. And that is really great inspiration, that you don't have to be in these other areas of success to be successful in business. And if the majority of billionaires are in business, like, that's the way that I'm looking. So I'm not so worried about the FOMO of not being knowledgeable in the stock market or knowledgeable in real estate. If I know people who are knowledgeable in those spaces, cool, maybe they can help me invest my excess money. But the bulk of my skill and talent, I think I want to be in business. And I think that that's especially powerful because the stock market is driven by business. So by getting good at business, I'm inherently getting good at stock market, right? And in getting good at real estate, I'm getting good at sales, but not scalable sales or not high value sales, right? And I think ultimately jobs that can be replaced by AI in the future are hedge fund managers and day traders and probably real estate agents. I think that can be all automated. But I think that AI, at least right now, is severely limited in its ability to produce new businesses and like actually build a functional system. So I think that you can use an online realtor, like an online real estate agent. You can use, dude, I would be shocked if like Acorns didn't, or Robinhood didn't come out in the next 2 years with like, there's a day trader AI. We can make you, 6% a day or something like that, right? But I think that building and implementing complex systems is still way ahead of AI's time. And if we're in a race against AI, we want to pick the most longevity style platform, and that's business. Yep. That's what I got.
100%. Cool. Thank you very much for tuning in this week. Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. And stay tuned next week for a guest. First time on Bridget 79.
And maybe a new setup. We don't know. We'll see.
Maybe a new setup too. Maybe a little bit of a different view.
Yes.
So, be well and have a great week and stay safe.